in the layman term, 30 years ago was organization structure, org structure. Okay, but I want to have the digital map that I can ask. So if I tell you that you are Mr. So and you are from that department, so can I just open digital map? I want to know what is your role, and I can also find out which are the department that you are working closely in your enterprise. Okay, and I can also find out what actually your SOP, your day-to-day job. Okay, are you approving? If yes, you're who approving it? What processes do you do? And after that, I also want to know which IT system that's supporting it. Okay, if you can give me that answer in 5 minutes, you don't need EA. Done. Many people said EA is a project. I have done my EA 3 years ago. Here are the proof, right? And most of the case is that the EA that they have done is in a static book, okay, static deliverable. As soon as you printed that static book, immediately obsolete. The second part, many people think EA is can eliminate the complexity. Okay, the fact is not the word eliminating, but is managing. Okay, how can now we manage that complexity and we do better than the rest? The third one, of course, people say that enterprise architecture is only for IT team. Okay, that is totally the myth. It was correct 20 years ago. You talk about architecture word, pass it to the IT team, but now the enterprise architecture involve, the stakeholders, key stakeholders, the decision maker, then involve a motivation of all the divisional head and also strategy, capability of the business. If the company don't have this type of so-called adoption on the architecture concept, they will not go anywhere because the world is moving very, very fast. So how fast can you respond? That is the question that we need to ask. With the EA, you can respond it quite quickly because you know exactly that I need to change my entire product offering, and the digital map will tell you like the GPS, right? It tell you, okay, these are 20 processes impacted, these are 3 departments impacted, these are the IT system that need to change, and you quickly make a decision within a day. What are you going to do? Without EA, you still can make a decision that may take weeks or months, depending on how big is your enterprise. Moving forward, the complexities and the digital complexity is exponential. And there must be some way to manage this. And you cannot do it the way we used to do it in the past. The benefit is that networking, I think, is very, very important. We believe that we can learn. I don't think we claim that we know everything. That's why we need to get the input from the industry, and they can do some validation, like check and balance.
So, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Dave Chen, and I'm the convener of Enterprise Architecture Specialist Group, EASG, and the Director of Emerging Technology of Hong Kong Computer Society. On behalf of HKCS, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this largest Enterprise Architecture Virtual Symposium. This is our first time to co-organize this event with Singapore Computer Society and its Enterprise Architecture chapter. I feel so excited about the close collaboration between the two computer societies, and I would like to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to SCS to make this event happen. COVID-19 pandemic has brought unexpected health, social, and economic effects, but it did not bring everything to a halt. We are still fortunate that technology and digital adoption has advanced so much and so fast that we can continue communicating and working with one another virtually. This also creates opportunities for this virtual event, and our EA leaders from both Hong Kong, Singapore, and even worldwide can gather and share their insights today. Let me first give a very brief introduction to HKCS. HKCS is founded in 1970. We are celebrating 50 years birthday last year with over 10,000 members. It's a recognized nonprofit organization focused on developing Hong Kong's IT profession and industry. EASG is to disseminate knowledge about EA and to the IT industry and establish a network of IT architects and enterprise architects for experience and knowledge sharing. We have organized Hong Kong's largest EA forum since 2013. You can see, but last year we did it virtually, but still happened. So the theme of today's Symposium 2021 is Spearheading Digital Innovation for the Future. Digital transformation becomes the hottest initiative in every organization. Digital business and the digital initiatives create new demands for the application services to support new business models, new technologies, and continuous improvement. There are too many digital initiatives to be handled by IT departments, I believe. Therefore, we are building more and more silo applications from scratch without a proper EA governance. Finally, we have created a lot of what we call the digital islands. For EA like us, without current and future enterprise views, it becomes very hard to manage the transition from current state to the future operating state. So how do we maintain EA governance while keeping the agility in the digital age? So digital EA becomes a very hard challenge. Here's the Gartner latest 2020 EA hype cycle. I believe most of you will know about hype cycle, that is highlighting the expectations of EA should be delivered. We could see that the key 2 to 5 years technologies for EA include the business agility, that is realize the value in the shortest time available, digital platform, a platform for combining of digital technologies, EA governance, providing a set of baseline artifacts, innovation management, how do we disrupt with the emerging technologies, and finally the machine learning, that is AI. So Gartner also said that EA would be positioned as a gateway to digital transformation. We could see that EA governance still plays a very key important role in the digital age. So EA also comes with the capability of formulating what we call the digital EA map. Aaron, SCS EA chairman, will also talk about this later on, so that we know what and when the architecture needs to change and align with the digital business strategy. So in this seminar, we have invited the most experienced IT architecture and EA leaders, etc., from the major organizations to share their viewpoints and real-world experiences in how EA work as a catalyst to speed up innovation for the digital age. In this afternoon, let's discover the following key issues in this symposium. First of all, the changing role of EA in the digital age. Second, transform IT governance capability with agility to meet the needs of digital business. And third, latest trends and best practices on application technology and architecture. And fourth, EA as a catalyst for creating business value. Finally, we will talk about a bit on how EA framework actually helps innovation. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank to SCS and also to our speakers and also our sponsors, our platinum sponsor Alibaba Cloud and our gold sponsor Mega International, and also of course our supporting organization Singapore Computer Society, and also the the coordination organization EA chapter. So that's all for my introduction. So I will pass to Aaron. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dave, for the introduction. Let me share my slide now. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron. I think super excited as well today that we can have a joint conference like this between Hong Kong and Singapore. I think in the past we have to travel. No other way that I don't think we can run the webinar like this, right? So we have either I travel to Hong Kong or they have come to Singapore. But now I think we can run this online. and virtually, and we can also have more participation from the two countries. I think enterprise architecture is here to stay for many years, especially in this today so-called we are being forced to accelerate our digital transformation. Okay, so let me just give you a very quick rundown on my chapters. So basically, is that our objective is that we want to accelerate the EA adoption, because I think in the past, or perhaps currently, still many perception on the enterprise architecture. They thought it's like highly super technical, and they said it's too theoretical, etc. But I think it's not true, because we have so many success and so many so-called references and the case study that we can share. Yeah. So of course, we also want to use EA to accelerate the realization of the digital nation. I think all the countries in the world trying to achieve this, including Singapore. And of course, we also want to equip our members with the knowledge sharing. So like this afternoon session is basically more on the experience sharing and how we can apply EA to drive digital transformation. And of course, we also want to align with the government mission in increasing a local talent of architects. I think architect is the one so-called shortage all over the world. And the job opening are actually in the, even like today, I check even in Singapore itself, there are about thousands of jobs require architect skill set and experience. But I don't think we can feel that, because it's very difficult to transform someone overnight to become architects. And of course, I will be sharing, and when I say that, I'll be sharing on the way how we can so-called unlearn and relearn a new skill to become architects, because I'll be sharing on the latest IMDA skill framework that defining 7 roles of architects, yeah, including the organization setup. And these are some of our ESCO that we have been running in the last 5 years. So we have a flavor from various government link, government agency, ministry, and then from finance banking, from investment, and also from academic. Yeah, so we have a balance on the committee to share about how EA is being practiced internally. And of course, we are running many events, and I think today we are on the 3rd of June. So we still have about 3 or 4 more events to wrap up end of the year, or maybe more, because I think we can have more topics to share among all our members. And I would also like to introduce the SES Year Awards for this year. So if you have a so-called a present office or entity in Singapore, even though your EA is not implemented in Singapore, you are welcome to participate. Okay, so we are going to kickstart this Enterprise Architecture Awards this year, and also for many years to come. Okay, so I think for those of you who have first time hearing this, not to worry. The submission date is will be end of July. So we still get about 2 months, exactly 2 months to prepare this. So there are 2 categories of submission. The first one is on the digital transformation on innovation. So you might want to share on how enterprise architecture help to transform and also innovate in terms of increasing new capability and etc. in your organization. The second one more on the customer centricity and service excellence. So how you use EA, enterprise architecture, to enhance your customer intimacy with your organization. Okay? So this is more appropriate if you are from the government agency or the ministry or for the non-profit, because you are serving a constituent. So the constituent itself need to be taken care. So how you are using a technology, and of course, how to apply enterprise architecture to enhance that. And the submission is 30th July, so still got 2 more months. And I think they got the website, and I think we have also prepared so-called video briefing on the what are sort of submission, the contents, and etc. So pretty comprehensive information that you can find in the website, including all the most frequently asked questions. So in terms of the category and the level, so actually there are 3 levels. The first one is Achievement Award, Outstanding Award, and Excellent Award. Okay, so I mean, if those of you who have submitted, I think we will not let you down, right? So you can see that you either can get Achievement, Outstanding, Excellent, and of course for each of the category itself, there will be EA of the Year Award. So this one is like best of the best, like the All-Star Award. So there will be a category that for each of them will be EA of the Year.
Throw in money. I don't know what is the amount that we're talking about that we can look at.
Okay, so in terms of the so-called digital transformation and innovation category, again, same level. So they got 3 levels: excellent, outstanding, and achievement. Likewise for customer centricity and service excellence, and for each one of them, there will be so-called EA of the Year award. The judging, so the first so-called stage is that the ESCO, or the ESCO, just now you have seen the our members, will be assigned to assess in terms of tabulating and scoring, right? So we have a so-called Excel sheet to do a so-called scoring. Then after that, we will pass our rating to industry expert, Dr. Kwong Yikwa and Ong Witek. I think you can hear Mr. Ong Witek will be presenting shortly after this. Then once we have done our internal so-called review, then we will pass it to the ISA Global, because we want to benchmark with the world best out there. Okay, so the ISA Global has already agreed. They have already assigned a few committee members to look into how we do scoring, so to get the fairness, right? And also they can do normalization in terms of the scoring. Once they have come back to us, then the SES Council at the highest management level, they will review the nomination and they will so-called approve and on the who will be so-called the winners. So submission and timelines. Actually, the submission is one document, 8,000 words. However, you can also supplement with others information. But the main submission is maximum 8,000 words. I think it's more than enough to write about what are the things needed for you to win this award. Okay, and of course, focusing on the how EA has been applied to solve enterprise problem. And of course, we are looking at the concrete business impact and benefit. And of course, 30th July, and then there will be if you are shortlisted, there will be a presentation scheduled between 21st and 30th September. Okay, the later of the year. Then the winner will be announced in the month of October. And hopefully, if we can have a so-called physical event, we are going to do award ceremony on the 18th November, which is also in conjunction with our annual SCS conference, EA conference on the 18th November. Okay, so for more information, you can go into the website scs.org.sg/awards/EA Awards 2021, or you can just Google SCS EA Awards 2021. It will land into this so-called page. And all the information, the template for you to submit are all there, including the frequently asked questions and also recorded video in terms of the briefing on how to participate in this award. So I look forward for everyone of you here to participate and nominate your team, because I think the dilemma of architect is that we might be doing a good job or something impactful, but nobody recognize us. So this is the time that for us to get recognized, not only by our organization, but also by the industry. Okay, so this is the opportunity for all of us. So with that, I think I just want to give the context on in the continuation of what Dave already mentioned about the Gartner Hype Cycle. So I have a different perspective in terms of the Gartner Hype Cycle in the context of basically it's like, if you see the chart is like the stock market chart, right? So we can see that the EA in the early days is at the acceleration, so-called adoption, acceleration path up to the year 2000, right? Then after that, it will just free fall like a roller coaster. So at the 2012 or 2011 actually is at the bottom of EA. So many companies actually defunct and also dismantle their EA team because they said it doesn't bring value. That's why in the 2012, Gartner noticed about this and then changed so-called the advocacy to focus a lot on the business. Right? Then in the 2013, the term of digital EA kicks in. Basically, more and more people are now realize that enterprise architecture is no longer static, but it is digital. Because we have a platform for us to query and for us also to interact, for us to do transformation, to do modeling, and to define the baseline and the target. Okay, so this is basically the context of the digital EA being mentioned or used for the first time in 2013, and now I think getting popular almost, you can Google it anywhere. Many of the so-called even the article are mentioning about this. Then of course in the 2014, Gartner also model that the enterprise will evolve in 2025 to have a so-called highly connected
entity, right? So basically inside out, outside in, and also outside out. So what it means is that we cannot look at the one angle within the organization, but we also need to be able to put ourselves into the other side, looking into us. Okay, and also outside to the outside. Basically, it's super highly connected. It is what our world today in the digital era, right? So Gartner made a prediction actually in 2014 about 10 years prediction, but I think with the COVID-19, the 2025 is this year. I don't think we can afford to wait for 2025 to make this happen. It's already happening now. And of course, in the 2016, also Gartner mentioned that for a successful digital transformation, enterprise architecture is the gateway. So without the gateway, you cannot enter into the territory. So gateway means the entrance for us to be successful in our digital transformation. Because many of the digital transformation team that I come across, actually they are just another PMO, right? So they are just executing the project, the request, except that every title of the project, they have the word digital. Because without that, they cannot get approved. But actually, they're still doing the same 10 years ago, 20 years ago project. So now, with the enterprise architecture, I think things change, and we need to adapt into the real so-called digital architecture. So again, this is the 2019, Gartner made a prediction that EA should function as a management consultancy. And I think for those of you who have ever engaged the management consultancy team or consulting team, you know that the management consultancy is typically they can advise, right? They can tell you what happened, what you should be doing in terms of like transformation. So the same thing here, the EF should be functioning exactly that, right? As a management consultancy, rather than just putting at the governance or at the high level, policy making, but more on the execution, how we can execute our strategy. Then in the 2020, Gartner also made the prediction that EA should turn an organization to become intelligent organization. What do you mean by intelligent? If someone tell me that I'm intelligent, that means that I know many things, right? I can just instantly tell you what happened when you ask me a question, right? And I can also give you a so-called prediction, right? Intelligent information that you never thought that you could get this information. So that's why the EA is really enabling the intelligent organization. That was last year. And this year, Gartner also made another prediction that the enterprise architecture help us into so-called decomposing the organization. How we can, like if you are in the era of programming, maybe 20 years ago, you talk about tightly coupling and after loosely coupling, right? So now the organization as well in the era of today is that borderless. So we need to be able to be decomposed fast, right? So how do we do that? Of course, if we thought the enterprise architecture, I think is very, very challenging. This is like merging and demerging within a few weeks or few months, right? So this is where the enterprise architecture playing a critical role with of course, the ability of to model the enterprise with the so-called meta model, with the viewpoint, to get a so-called digital enterprise map alive for us to drive the transformation. Okay, so with that, I think I would like to hand over quickly to Morgan to take over our first panel discussion, number 1. It's about accelerating the rise of the digital economy. I think this is quite interesting because this year we have so-called one person from I think GIC, Hui Xiang, right? He will be sharing with you about how the EA has been applied in the GIC. I think for those of you in Singapore, you know who is GIC, but those who live in Hong Kong, you can Google. This is so-called the mighty arm of the investment of Singapore government. And of course, we have the ESCO member of SKCS and also Mr. Dave Chen himself. So we'll be sharing a lot on the how EA being practiced in Hong Kong. And of course, we also have the so-called Mr. Chayono is from Indonesia. So he is tasked to so-called develop a national enterprise architecture for the nation. Okay, so his task is not doing enterprise architecture for organization, for enterprise, but for the nation. And the nation is the size of Indonesia, almost I think 300 million population and 35 provinces. So it's the amount is his scale of the coverage is huge. Okay, so I think without further ado, I hand over to Morgan to take over from now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Aaron, very much for the warm introduction. And very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this symposium. And we hope that with myself, Morgan, as the moderator for this panel session, together with my colleagues, panel colleagues, Mr. Kano, Justy, Mr. Huaixiang, and also Dave to share on this topic of accelerating the rise of the digital economy. Well, firstly, I would like to share a little bit of what this panel discussion is about. Okay, we're talking about many organizations are, they're ramping up and shifting towards digital first models at a very fast speed. Yeah. So IT leaders, CXOs, they are all moving or putting a priority into digital first adoption to better their business, to serve their customers better, to work with their employees better, especially in this time of the pandemic. Things change, the way we work change, and how efficient we work now all depends on how we are being supported in this ecosystem, in this organization, how fast they move, and what can we do remotely, for example. So are there any other blocks, etc.? So a lot of organizations are speeding things up to get things done. So today we're going to discuss about this. We're going to talk about the challenges this pose to organization, and the benefits that it brings. So in a digital first, there are a lot of plus points that can come with it if it's adopted properly, or if we, mindfully move in that direction with the guidance of EA. So we're going to talk from the perspective of the enterprise architecture. What would they play in this situation right now we are in? Yeah. So first and foremost, I'd like to get the fellow panelists to share a little bit about themselves, what they do besides sitting in the exco. I believe there are some very interesting roles they play also in like Justy. His very interesting job there. Mr. Karno, he's like the bureaucratic reform. That means, well, that's very interesting because you're not changing one small little organization. You have to think about so many. Okay, we have Dave, who was shared earlier, with very interesting insights. Okay, and Huaixiang, who's joining us here today, and also the same. It's not looking at one enterprise, but looking at many different industries as well. Yeah. So I will first of all, I'd like to invite Mr. Charyono to share a little bit about himself and what he do, and what the organization that you are in do, and what's the landscape like in Indonesia.
Thank you, Pak Morgan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Maybe I would like to say thank you for all the fellow panelists who have invited me to this symposium. First, my organization is to have a goal, to have a kind of reform bureaucracy in Indonesia. So we have a policy to have IT consolidation, IT integration, but not application of technology, but also with the business process and the service. Especially, we have to define the Indonesian digital service to make sure the vision of Indonesia is to achieve. And I think that's the general goal in our organization. Thank you, Morgan.
Okay, thank you. Next, Justin, would you like to share a little bit about yourself and your organization?
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Justin Yun. I'm from West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. And in the authority, I'm leading the architecture, security, and data analytics function. For people, you may not heard about West Kowloon Cultural District. It is a district from Hong Kong government. It is located at the heart of the Hong Kong and then near the Victoria Harbour. And it is a quite big district. It's about 40 hectares. And our cultural district is trying to build that all those area with cultural and art and environment to the public. And we target to be the Asia cultural district hub and here. And traditionally, you may think museum may be a painting, sculptures, and not that digitized. But nowadays, I can tell you that we move on that and digital space and online space quite a lot right now. So it's a quite interesting development here.
Okay, thank you, Justy. I think Justy will share a little bit more later on some of the adoptions, digital adoption that this organization has taken up. Yeah. Next, we'll have Huai Xiang. Would you like to share a little bit about your background and your organization?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So thanks, Morgan, for the introduction, and thank you to the SCS and Hong Kong CS for the invitation. Okay, so my name is Huai Xiang, and I basically head up the architecture and solution delivery team in GIC. So just a bit quick introduction on GIC, as what Aaron had mentioned just now. So GIC is actually a sovereign wealth fund. It's actually one of the 3 reserve management entities in Singapore. And its mandate is actually to preserve and enhance the long-term purchasing power of Singapore through the reserve placed under its management. So that's essentially the mandate that we are doing. We don't have huge customer base, like a typical commercial entity. So what we do is we are investing on behalf of the Singapore, and also we look after, the reserve in terms of, how we can ensure that there's a long-term purchasing power. So together with my fellow colleagues, we look after the enterprise architecture and the digital roadmap of the company. So we take care of, identifying what kind of capabilities a company require, not just from a technology angle, but also from the capabilities as well, the business capabilities as well. And also we work with our fellow colleagues in other departments, be it on the business side or be it on the technology side, to kind of navigate the complexity that we have today in GIC. Yeah, so that's basically a quick introduction of what we have. Thanks,
Okay.
Morgan.
All right, thank you, Huai Xiang. Next, we'll have Dave to share a little bit more. I think he shared a little bit just now, but if you can share a little bit more in this aspect of the
Yeah,
topic.
sure. Thank you. Yeah, this is Dave. Actually, I'm working for the Hong Kong Trade Development Council as the chief architect role. So we are a public organization in Hong Kong, mainly focus on exhibition industry and also help the SMEs promote to the global. So 3 years ago, we have kickstart our digital transformation journey, mainly focus on building the digital marketplace platform, applying the AI and big data. We also have the digital exhibition and conferences, digital workplace, etc. So due to the pandemic, most of the exhibitions, have forced to stop. We can't meet face-to-face physically. So we are entering another three years of roadmap, focusing on the virtual events and also the virtual conferences, just like this time. So the pandemic also forced us to be the digital first organization because as you know, all of us have to work from home and work digitally. Yeah, that's a brief introduction to my company.
Oh, thank you, Dave. Now I think we'll go to the next question. Now we'll talk about the enterprise architecture perspective, and I'll start off with Dave since you just finished off that session. Is what are some of the fundamental things that needs to be done before an organization embark on a digital first approach strategy, and why do we need to do that?
Yeah, I think first of all, we have to make sure the digital strategy. We need to have the digital strategy, but we make sure the digital strategy aligns with the business strategy as well as the IT strategy. So digital, IT, and business should be aligned on the same roadmap, on the same strategy. Along the roadmap, there are lots of digital needs, maybe from different business departments, I believe, and most of them may consider adopting some maybe cloud or some shadow IT SaaS service in the market for a quick win. So without a very good planning, this will create a lot of what we call the digital islands and silo systems without proper integrations to each other. So EA plays a very critical role and key in the digital governance. And also we are in a role understand the architecture landscape and for example, the SE and 2B architecture, standardizing the platform, and also balance between the agility and also the governance. That's my view.
Okay, thank you. Now we will look at from the government perspective. Mr. Chow, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think the government has to change a lot. I mean, it's so many the progress about the technology, the progress about how the business is doing about the pandemic COVID. So that's why in Indonesia we have already starting to have a national enterprise sector, and I hope the enterprise sector in Indonesia become more simplified, more harmonized on the process business in government. That's to make the digital service in Indonesia is to make it better. I think that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. So you mentioned harmonize, the EA. So
yes.
So that comes from your office?
Yes. That's okay. Maybe I'd like to share the information that Indonesia have a kind of coordination team about the e-gov implementation. There's kind of 7 institutions in Indonesia, which is in the like a Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Technology, Ministry of Security. That's all the coordination team. This is to harmonize all the enterprise sector in Indonesia. That's to make sure the central government and regional government has to do the enterprise sector rely on the national enterprise sector.
Okay, great, thanks. Next, I would like to get Justy your input into this. You mentioned art, you mentioned museums and all that. So perhaps how would they approach this, and what sort of what do you call that, the EA perspective for this organization?
And first of all, we call artists or creators. They know that they want to digitize digital space, and they want to move this area. They want to explore more, but they may not lack of the know-how on how to do it. So as Dave said, we have a strategy already, but for our enterprise architecture team, we work as an enabler to them. We help them. We show them. We help you to take care of the technical part. We are not. We have governance. We have some practice, but not we are blocking you. We help you to, for example, we have an approach for development. Then we have secure their coding, and we take care of the security part so that we work as a partner for them, so that they will engage us rather than we are just govern them or block them or control them. That will be quite important. Of course, we have strategy buy-in, then down to the working level that we will work like this, and then they will come to engage us and consult us how and what they can do, and they will share their idea, then we'll move along together.
So we will consider such organization in terms of their technology adoption, a small organization team, or do they just have a dedicated team for this?
And for the enterprise architecture, you mean?
Yes.
Actually it's a small team. Just like me, take care of architecture part is not a big team. Several people, 2 or 3 people take care of the architecture team. We adopt quite a lot of the automation tools on that. We define the practice and framework, but the actual working is from different area or from different people. That's quite important, and we don't control everything. We set the boundary for them to work inside the boundary that you are safe, and then we are defining, for example, we define the framework, and then they can pick and choose rather than let us to review and then take times, and when we spend a lot of time review back and forth. I have For example, the creator, the artist, they have their supplier all over the world: New York and Los Angeles, Paris, England, Norway, China, Japan, everywhere. I can't beat all of them. That's quite important. So there's some framework so that they can pick and choose.
Okay, great. Thank you. Huai Xiang, like to hear your input on this, how GIC handles this.
I think just like what Dave has mentioned, right? I think gone is the era where EA is kind of be seen as the ivory tower architects, and then it just basically provide policies and governance. I think the new era of EA, if I were to say it that way, is actually to join with the business, at the hip, to outline and form the strategic initiative from the beginning. So that basically means three important things to us, actually. First of all, is we need to identify who are our key stakeholders that we need to work closely with. And when I mean key stakeholders, it doesn't just mean the technology key stakeholders, but also the business stakeholders as well. And then after that, we also need to identify what are the capabilities that we need as an organization to deliver the digital roadmap that we have in mind. And that comes with firstly identifying what is the business vision that we want to achieve, and then followed by the strategy that we want to use to achieve the vision that we have. So for GIC, right, we kind of classify the capabilities into three areas. First one is more on the planning capabilities, i.e. what are the governance structure, what are the solution guidance, what are the architectural governance that we want to put in place so that we can systematically plan the roadmap accordingly. So that's one of the capabilities. The other one is probably more on the innovation capabilities. What sort of technology platforms that we need in order to enable the business innovation that we want to achieve. So that comes down to potentially, like in our case, we have been looking at cloud native adoptions for the past couple of years, trying to figure out how we can leverage cloud to the maximum that we can, and actually kind of derive interesting digital products as a result of that. The third one is really more about what are the capabilities we need to build to continuously engage the stakeholders, and making sure that it's a two-way communications between the stakeholders and the EA office. The reason is because the last thing you want is an EA function that just work on documenting the systems and looking at technology standards, because you want to ensure that whatever you have documented, whatever that you are producing is actually adding value at the end to the value chain, to the business. So what we do is actually we look at how we can facilitate that two-way communication as well. So to us, we actually have an enterprise architecture board that actually help to facilitate that engagement constantly. So yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell what we do to prepare ourselves for digital first kind of organization.
You mentioned capability mapping. So how would you go about doing that from an EA point of view?
Well, I think what we do is typically we will first of all identify what are the key outcomes or key business outcomes that the business want to achieve from a short-term to a long-term perspective. And then from there, we will break out to the key capabilities and business needs that we need. So when you talk about capability mapping, it's really like, for example, I need to build a strong big data analytics and artificial intelligence capability so that I can derive investment insights. So that itself is one key capabilities from an innovation perspective. We also have another one which is about how can we build something that is have a strong business alignment in terms of analytics, in terms of allowing more efficient trade processing, for example. So that's another business capability that we identified to achieve the overall vision that GIC has. Mm-hmm. So by looking at that, we actually break down the key components that we need to enable. And again, a lot of times these are really a manifestation of what TOGAF has taught us, right? Looking at the vision, looking at the business architecture, map out the capabilities, and with the proper platforms and toolings that actually also help us a lot, because we actually can kind of map it out in a systematic way. So once we have that, then the next level of ideation is really looking into what do we need to achieve the business capabilities, what kind of cloud services we need. For example, if you're looking at cloud adoption, and also what kind of big data or data sets or data analytics capabilities that we need from a technology standpoint that can enable that. So this is kind of a two-way top-down and bottom-up analysis that we did.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Wai Xiang.
Right.
Dave, just now you earlier mentioned about SMEs, supporting SMEs and all that, because we look at large organization. Whenever we talk about EA, we always talk about big enterprise and all that. But you also mentioned about supporting SMEs. How would they approach EA or have EAs support them in this digital first sort of initiative?
Yeah, I think for those SMEs, they may not have resources on dedicated EA teams or members. They may have very small IT teams that is supporting the operation or even just managing the network, something like that, the infrastructure, very small team. So, but I think even though they are small, but same as the other IT organization or company, we are all facing the same challenges. That is, we are moving on to the digital transformation journey. We are forced to do that. Yeah. So the major EA can help is to have the mindset for the IT people. They may not have a framework to do that, but I think they can start from something like the mindset on having overview or having an architecture landscape, or even they know about what they are having as is in terms of infrastructure architecture or application architecture. They may have some spend some resources for a dedicated person in their IT small team to start from that journey. And that is beneficial to the organization, because when you are talking about some ad hoc projects, they may some digital projects to be implemented, they can reference to what they are having, so they can move faster, so they can have a better standardization on that. So yeah, that's my advice. If you could start from small team, start from the existing resources, that to pick the one who is having the most understanding of your IT infrastructure or landscape, to ask him to start from there.
Yeah, and I think one of the best place for resources in this kind of practice would be the HKCS and the SES EA SIG.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, EA chapter now. Sorry,
Yeah.
I keep remembering the past. So this is where practitioners can come together or share ideas and how they would start. I think we have shared so much over the time. I've heard some of the events conducted in Hong Kong CS, as well as in the SES EA chapter, ways of adopting EA, doing a practice, just putting one person understanding it, just practicing it, to have an understanding of what EA does, to have a view of the landscape. It's the basic of EA, I would say. Yeah, thanks. So SMEs are still welcome to understand EA, because it will help them to learn from the big boys also, how to navigate. One day the SME would be a large organization, and they don't want to get stuck like what large organization started, Yeah.
Yeah, same as the startup. There are lots of startups in Hong Kong, as I think the same as in Singapore.
Yeah.
So today they may just have few people, but I believe if their idea is good, so they may grow into a giant enterprise very soon. So that's why we leverage the cloud, or that's why we have the EA. Those are helping for the scalability.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good. So the next one, I want to go back to Justy. interestingly, just you would talk about the curators and all that, how digital, technology and transformation help the various, curators, the people supporting the museum, the art space, the parks, etc. What about the, the enhancement or the change to the visitor engagement or experience for these organizations like the museums, the parks, etc.?
First of all, because of the COVID-19 situations, and we are expanding the physical visit to digital space, or we try to do that. And the other thing is we try to adopt those new technology inside the museum. For example, when we go to the museum, usually in the old days when the students paintings, sculpture we brought around, but right now they're thinking the AR, VR, mixed reality experience inside the museum, how the interaction, the art form, the art pieces interact with the visitors. With them, they are, of course, they're digital space. They're using some computerized and connected equipment, and all those things. The curator knows that the how does it look like, the experience, but definitely they don't know how to do it technically. Then our enterprise architecture performs that, fill in the gap between the artists and then to the implementers, and then help them to do so. For example, one of the things is, in the old days we bring the map when we walk through the museum. All the year, and then we have the mobile app, we have wayfinding tools, and now, and furthermore, then we are thinking to prepare if they don't know, first time visit, they don't know what kind of a museum, what kind of gallery, what kind of exhibition inside. We can help them to plan with connected different of technology. For example, people counting the physical one, and then to direct the people to the less crowded route automatically, and or help them to use the ML technology to guide them through the museum. Then they will save their time and they can enjoy the cinema than queuing up in the area. That will help a lot. And the other thing is, they are for the digital space. We are trying to open our connections to the public. We have open API, public API to open all those information to let people build their art by themselves based on our open informations. There are quite lots of things happening.
That's interesting to hear about interactive art, which is a new form of, we don't really experience this in the old days. Interactive art means you can touch the actual sculpture, basically. Yeah. So, but now it's totally different. It's a new form of art, totally, but it's powered by, supported by digital.
Yeah, and usually sometimes you perform something on your mobile phone, for example, other visitors perform something too, and then the art may be changed based on the visitor's response. That you are participate in the art.
Wow, that's interesting. That's a new way of looking at things. Totally, yeah. So yeah, that's what digital first is about. Talking about how, whatever we do, we want to take into perspective, how can we have it on digital rather than just think about a software to use to do something. It's more, how do we do it, and how can we leverage on digital to get things done? Thanks, Justy. I'd like to check in with Chayono on the how would you say by putting in this sort of bureaucratic reform while you're doing this, how would it tie in to each agency's strategies? How would you do that? I mean, how would your team do that, or what's the approach to it?
Yes, okay, thank you. As Pak Aran said, that the enterprise architecture is no longer about the IT, it's no longer about technology, but it's how about we achieve the organization goal. That's why we emphasize the enterprise architecture is to how to make the digital service in Indonesia and to make have a good service for the stakeholder from the society. That's why we implement the EA policy in Indonesia is not from the technology, but to make sure all the like bureaucratic have a new way of working about the digital, and they have a capability to make a good innovation about the digital service. That's our strategy. So all the agency and the regional government can implement the enterprise sector according to their organization goals. That's our strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next, if you can stay on, the next one I want to ask about, yeah, we have our strategies, our capabilities and all that, but we also have challenges that we face when we embark on all this, you know, the architectural challenges that we have. Yeah, what are some of it that you see or you foresee, you know, will happen if, let's say, they want to, you know, go into digital transformation, and how can we address them?
Okay, thank you. I think from the typically in the bureaucratic, so the guidance is needed. So the guidance in the enterprise sector is already decided in the national level. So on the institution have to refer the national. That's why we formulate the enterprise sector not from the institutional, not from the regional government, but formulate the enterprise sector from the national. So that's when all the initiative strategies in the institution have to alignment with the national strategy. That's why maybe because there's so many technology innovation, so many initiative strategy, maybe so many cost cutting in other institutions. That's why we need to harmonize with the enterprise sector.
Yeah, so at least you have central, you know, agency that drive and with the blessing from the government, the top. But let's hear from the commercial part of the economy or the industry. I'd like to go to Huai Xiang. Would you like to share that some of the challenges faced by industries?
I think a few things I can call out. I think the first one is, you know, as you mentioned, right? You know, companies are trying to move as much as possible to digital products, to tap onto the untapped markets or to take advantage of the business opportunity. So speed and agility are getting more and more important. Now, I would say that, you know, initially when EA are being formed, the key driver has always been like, okay, let's do it from a consolidation point of view. Let's look at it from a cost-cutting perspective, which is still important. But what is happening now is, I think, you know, there is another angle to it, that how can we move fast and move with speed so that we can generate the revenue growth, which is actually a key driver for the company as well. And how can we win over more and more customers? So to do that, right, actually, the first thing is really to look, you know, to look from outside in rather than inside out. The reason is because, like what Aaron said, you know, when you start looking at inside out, a lot of times you have this blind spot that you might not be aware of what, you know, really the business is looking for. So so in other words, you know, the pitfall first is make sure that you don't, you know, just work within silo. You actually need to reach out and understand, you know, what the overall larger organization are looking at, you know, from a revenue generating perspective, and also from a cost management perspective. And then the other pitfall is this. I think a lot of times, you know, we kind of look at one size fit all type of EA, where, you know, okay, this is what is being prescribed by the framework, just use it as is, and then expect that you will get the outcome that you need. So I have not seen an organization that looks exactly the same. There are so many types of you know, organizations with different operating model. So we need to tune the framework to cater for that kind of variation. so that the EA practice can be a bit more flexible and more nimble to cater for the change. And also the other challenge that I see so far, even within my own area, is that we don't really communicate that much in terms of change management. While we're doing EA, we are helping the teams to align all the dots together. But rather, when we reach out to teams, we are like the governance body. You're not supposed to do this, not supposed to do that, rather than being seen as an enabler. So I think it's really more about also communications and change management, making sure they understand why EA is important and why we are playing our role, or as like put it in a very layman term, is connecting the dots kind of person, and help you move forward to achieve your objective. So yeah, so I think this is where I find that we need to kind of start pivoting towards that direction if we haven't done so that we can actually achieve the outcome that we want.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Dave, what are your thoughts here? What sort of challenges, architectural challenges that you see in what you do?
Yeah, I do agree with Weixen. Actually, most of the digital projects may adopt the agile methodology nowadays. So, for example, they are forming Scrum team, building user stories, and roll out by sprint and very quickly agile. But from my experience, the agile team may focus on the digital product development. But while a lot of things they may be missing, for example, from the governance, security, EA point of view. So, the integration governance is also very important, in terms of so many digital projects. So to address this, in Agile, we have the mindset on minimal viable product, right? So what we call the MVP. And in architecture, we may also, EA may need to set up the minimal viable architecture, the MVA, and to ensure that all the digital projects should have certain standard or architecture requirements. So in addition, usually Agile may come with DevOps process to speed up, like they technically they call about the CI/CD for faster product development and deployment. However, this may skip a lot of security governance, and I suggest that you may consider EA could consider something like the DevSecOps approach with more transparency. For example, some dashboard monitoring or control to your security team that may help the situation. So in short, the agile and the digital agility and the EA governance, we need to strike a balance.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Now we want to, let's say if there's how do we get the support from stakeholders? Let's say if for example, we are talking about we are moving too fast. There's sometimes too many initiatives going on. How do we get the buy-in or support from the stakeholders, to do things in steps, following the EA practice? Yeah. So how do we do that? What are some of the recommendations?
Yeah, actually, architects may become a burden to the digital projects as the role is quite blur in the agile team. In agile, usually for the Scrum methodology, we don't have a role called architect. So we need to think about the EA office should clearly define the R&R. And also how to paint a picture that architect is not a person who slow down the progress, but to ensure that there's no rework in the future. With a proper integration, we are speeding up things, but not slowing down things. So this is very key. We need to define the R&R before the project kickstart, especially for digital agile project.
So the EAO will have to work with different teams to understand what are the requirements, the obstacles that they may face, and so that it strikes a balance.
it's okay to change our role of EA. To be honest, we don't need to have a fixed R&R for EA. We need to adapt the digital transformation. If that digital project needs the EA to be like that, we can sort of try to transform ourselves into a role that can really help the digital projects. But to be reminded that we need to keep the mindset of from the EA strategy or from the high level perspective.
Okay. So if so this come to the last question. We have a little bit more time left. So if there is one key takeaway for architects, okay, when they're going at this fast speed, what would you say? One word. Maybe you start with Dave.
Yeah, I can't say in one word, but I think the EA still play a very important role. We have to review the traditional EA process, as I mentioned before. We need to streamline and identify the core elements to adapt the digital project, and also we should think of the overall picture from city planning viewpoints. Yeah, that is the value of EA, bringing the value to the enterprise and help drive innovation.
Okay. What about Justy? What's your takeaway? If let's say if there's one thing that you would like to share.
Managing the enterprise architecture, so I think it's a repeating enhancement during these years, and you should look outside to see what's happening, and then refine your architectures, and then adapt it adopted to the real environment. So that keep your eyes open, and then watch out what's happening outside the world.
Thank you, Justy. Chayono?
Okay, I think the EA is the game changer how to improve the national service, because with the enterprise architecture we can focus all the resource we can put in the one direction. I think that EA is great for the how to harmonize and integrate all the system in Indonesia.
Okay, thank you. Hui Xiang? What's one thing that you like to?
I think the key point is really, if you ask me, right? I mean, for my experience, we have kind of moved away from the centralized EA to more federated model. And by federated model means, the EA actually works closely in specific strategic projects and programs, right? So that we can inculcate the culture of, looking at the big picture before start working on the smaller stuff. So I think we are starting to get a bit more traction into that part, because we kind of feel that, we can get better engagement as a result of that model. So I would say that, this is probably something that, we have learned that it actually does work, and this is probably a better way to approach EA for many commercial organization, I would say, especially when you have a lot of different business unit and departments working together.
Okay, I think for most organization, I think they would stay away from EA because they're just afraid of going in or start this engagement. Like someone said, it's a jungle, and they don't want to get in on such. So anyone would like to share how to share some confidence in this? Dave?
Yeah, as I said before, the traditional EA office mindset may need to really transform a bit from a very big EA framework like TOGAF. We may consider a lighter version.
Yeah.
Maybe simply a digital EA map, or with the use of something like the tools like Archimate for easy understanding and faster explanation to the business user and stakeholders. That may help the case.
Okay. I think end of the day, if they fear it's like a jungle, they should have an EA first of all, so that they can navigate through.
Yeah. I think we need a very good communication, as Wei Sing mentioned earlier. I agree with that. Yeah, the communication between all the stakeholders on what EA brings values, that is very key to when you are starting any EA projects or even digital transformation project. The R&R and also the deliverables, we need to clearly define before we kickstart. Yeah, otherwise, all of the architects under the EA team, they may, we always kidding about this. The enterprise architect do not know what should put in the timesheet, and because they are always mentioning about doing the mapping, doing the EA, the artifacts, but actually what is the stakeholder or the business stakeholder looking is delivering the digital projects. How do we align the EA with the digital projects deliverables? That is something we need to think about.
I think the other one is, I think Huai Sheng also mentioned about the value, the business value it brings at the end of the day. So that would help in the, elevating the EAO and what they do in the organization. Okay, so with that, thank you. We still have about a few minutes to the end of the session. I'd like to take this time to, if there's any questions from the floor. I think someone asked about, I think Dave mentioned this already, but someone was asking about the scale agile framework, and how does this go with the EA role?
Yeah, I think actually some of the agile framework may touch on the EA, but that's something we need to do more research. Maybe we can ask more in the next session. In the next panel discussion, we have some good EA experience guys. I understand that from Open Group they are doing something on that already, but when we are talking about the agile framework, they have a very full-blown way to describe every process. And how do we trip in the EA process in the agile process? And this is something we may look into in the future. Yeah, that's a very interesting thing we need to do more.
Okay, so we have to stay put and then to get to know what will be shared later on.
Yep.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Well, with that, I'd like to thank Dave. I'd like to thank Justy, Chayono, and Huai Sheng for sharing in this panel session. There was a lot of insights. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, good day.
Good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morgan.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Morgan. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks.
為業務創造更大價值，阿里雲陪你持續創新，我哋幫你打造線上線下新零售，令買家更方便揀到心儀貨品。透過雲端平台快速開發，覆蓋全球客戶，為用戶帶嚟最佳使用體驗。加上領先同合規嘅金融科技解決方案，令客戶更快把握投資先機。阿里雲，你嘅持續創新平台。
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Now we are up to the first topics. They will be delivered by Mr. Ong Witek. Okay, let me just introduce him. I think he's one of, despite his holding a very senior position with Singapore Computer Society, and I think I know him. He is a very dedicated, and he is the strong believer on the enterprise architecture. And I think he's also one of the champions supporting our EA chapters. Okay, with that, I think I want to thank you, Mr. Ong, for your support. So let me just introduce him. I think Ong Witek is currently the Chief Executive Officer of the Trusted Services, and he has many years of global IT experience. Okay, you name it, from banking to corporation, and he's also for consultancy. And of course, he ran many transformation. And of course, he has also a balanced view between business and technology. Okay, and then interestingly about him also, he was an adjunct professor with the National University of Singapore, and teaching about IT leadership, software, and enterprise architecture. So that was from 2013 to 2019. Okay, so he has also have a balance between what he has practiced, he gained experience in the industry, and how he also impart that knowledge to the student that are learning with in the National University of Singapore. And of course, another interesting part about him also, in 2012, he also took a time off to learn how to draw. I think if you know about his so-called his art painting skill are very, very interesting and unique. Okay, and of course, he also held 3 exhibitions and saw a number of his artwork. So this is also something he has a balance between, you know what, in the human they call it left brain, right brain, right? So he has a balance in there, the art and also the science. And also he also published a book with the title Adult Learning Architecture. So this is about him. He's quite a well-rounded person. And the topic that he's going to share is also very interesting. The education of an enterprise architect. Okay, I think the context in today's world with the incredible speed of change, everything changed rapidly. So enterprise architects as practitioners, we also need to be adapt and adopt, right? Otherwise, we will be obsolete and we will be called not relevant. Okay, so of course today with the advancement of the AI, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and many jobs actually have been taken over by the robot, by the machine. How about an architect? Okay, I think without further ado, let's listen from Witek in terms of his thought on this, how EA can bring impact to the organization, and of course in the context of the advancement of the recent development on the so-called industry revolution 4.0. Over to you, Witek.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Can you hear me? I hope it's loud and clear.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Excellent. So I'm just gonna share my screen. Now I'm just gonna share. I can't find the button. Give me a second. Okay, problem. I can't find the button to share the screen. Okay, never mind.
At the bottom. Should be at the bottom next to the chat.
I think, okay, let me know when you see the screen, please. Yep.
Yeah, we saw you sharing.
Okay. All right. So maybe let me just thank you very much for inviting me to speak. I always like to share my thoughts. This is a kind of like a first time I'm doing this set of presentation. So bear with me as I have my meandering of my thoughts, so to speak, for the next 20-25 minutes. I'm going to go quite fast, and it's going to be a lot of reflection of my own learning. So some of you may know that I ran Accenture or Anderson Consulting when I started more than 28 years ago. For about 6 years, I ran the almost like Asia's enterprise architecture group. There were about 30 over of us, and you know, we went around doing some of the most complicated architecting of client solution, if you like. And they were not just technology; it includes a lot of the organization design as well. So let me just talk about this point where, you know, in Ernest Hemingway's novel *The Sun*, somebody asked this Mike, how did he go bankrupt? And he says 2 ways, right? He answers, gradually, then suddenly. So the problem with today, you know, is that we are living in such a speed of change. You've heard this before. It is exponential change. We are living in this time where it is completely, you know, out of whack. Change is the only constant, if you like. But it's not just change, it's the speed of change. It's going at this exponential curve, just like this pipe, you know, line that you can see. We, as human beings, we can only do a, you know, a reasonable job in modeling our understanding of the world, right? So what do? We model the first part in a linear way, and then we model the second part in a linear way, as well, as you can see. So it's kind of like a two straight line, but actually it's more like an exponential change that's happening all around us. The reason is very simple. We are facing a combinatorial effect of all the change. When I was growing up as a student in electrical engineering, I wasn't a computer science student. I was an electrical engineering student. And your processor at that point, it was 8086, and then it goes to 8088. If you remember those years, some of you are old enough as I am. You remember those years. It was very slow and painful, the kind of progress. You read the RAM spec or the processing spec, it's just so slow, right? But now, yeah.
Sorry, we haven't been able to see your screen. Maybe you want to reshare again.
Okay, let me resume share. Stop share, and apologies about that. Let me see whether you can see it again. Do you see the speed of change? Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Okay, it may be a bit of a problem that doesn't move. Okay, anyway, so what I'm saying is that the speed of change is just not possible for the human mind to comprehend. So as an enterprise architecture, it is our job to be able to read the sign of time, to read the time of today and be able to interpret it for our organization. I know there's a lot of problems with the role of enterprise architect and how well defined it is in this agile world, and how our management don't appreciate and don't understand what the role is. They still think that enterprise architecture needs to be boxed up and put into the IT organization, which should not be the case, because it really should be a boardroom level type of thing. But what I'm trying to say is, it's our job to interpret the sign of time. And one of the biggest thing is this idea that speed of change is exponential. And we need to help our client, which is the business, understands, or the CEO or the board understands that. The other thing about architecture versus engineering, just to check, can you see this screen about architecture begins where engineering ends, Aaron?
Yes, yes.
Okay, excellent. So, we always talk about engineering and we confuse it with architecture. And I've heard so much about the architect for databases or architecture of, application. To me, those are oxymoron, right? Because an architecture and a piece of work deals with everything all the way until the business organization, right? So how can you call yourself an architect of databases or architect of network? Okay, I understand what it means, but I think more appropriately, it should be called engineering of network or engineering of databases, not architecture. Architecture is where we are looking at the holistic view of things, inclusive of business organization, people, and so on and so forth, right? Michael Dell, he talked about this, it's a quote: every breakthrough business idea begins with solving a common problem. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. And he discovered this when he went to look at, IBM PC, right? Well, the components were all manufactured by other companies, and the system that retailed for $3,000 cost in total, the parts were only $600. He saw a business opportunity, took it, and that's why he's the multi-billionaire that he is. He looked at it holistically in that sense. Of course, in this case, it's still very micro in the sense that it's just a micro PC. But my point is, whenever you look at things holistically, you see completely different value proposition. And I think that's what we need to be doing. Some of you may heard me talk about this story before. Humanity has been building buildings for thousands of years. You think about pyramid, we've been building buildings 6,000 years, probably, if you think about the first pyramid that was built. And we were pretty good at it. I mean, look at the building is still standing today, right? And so I asked the question, how many years have we been building application? And you go, probably about 60. So 60 and 6,000, 2 zeros, right? Two magnitude, differentiating the industry called civil engineering and the industry called IT, right? And I think today, if you ask, the complexity of building buildings, we are pretty much at the limit. We know how high we can go with material engineering, right? The strength of the material that we have. We know how long it takes to build a building. All this simulation, you punch in the specs, you can tell how long it takes, how many bricks, how many people, and so on and so forth, right? But why is building applications, so complicated? It's because we can't copy and paste. If it's the same application, we don't build it, we just install it, right? But the fact that if you are building something new, it's never been done before. So we even have a problem of trying to assess the effort it is required to build it. So that's why as an enterprise architecture, it's our job to communicate clearly the complexity of building application, right? And the complexity of building systems in this new world that we only as humanity, 60 years of experience, right? When people talk about engineering, they always think about 6,000 years, but it's our job in enterprise architect to remind our counterpart in the business or the bosses that, look, we only have 60 years. We don't even know the differentiations between the different roles, right? In building buildings, we have architect, we have bricklayers, we have urban planners, we have civil structural, all that stuff. Of course, today we have databases, network, and whatever it is, but it's only slowly forming the different swim lane, if you like. And even in application architecture, it's just one of the 4 big stream lane that we're thinking about. Business being the other one, information and infrastructure being the other, the last one, right? So those are kind of backdrop that's very, very important for us to consider as an enterprise architect. And I think taking all this, into consideration, it's very important that as an architect, your job is to be in always learning, always learning. I don't think you can get away from learning. In fact, the world is going faster and faster. So our job is to continue to learn even faster with all these changes that is surrounding us, right? I mean, that to me is just not something that we can argue with. If you are an enterprise architect, your job is to always learn, and you always need to be on top of the latest technology, the latest business model, and whatever else that is required to be successful in your role, right? Alvin Toffler, this is one of my favorite quote: "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those that cannot read and write, but those that cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." We are already, I don't know, quite a bit into the 21st century. So, how is your learning? How is your unlearning? And how is your relearning? I don't know, but I think that's a question that all enterprise architect needs to be thinking about. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I came up with my own model, right? I wrote a book about this, and I kind of think very deeply around how I am learning. I won't go through the model in complete. It's just we don't have the time for it. If you look up my YouTube channel, you may find some of the video I've made when I did some of this presentation, but I'll just focus on the 5 things, basically: mind, muscle, motivation, matter, membership, the 5 M's at the bottom. The biggest one is motivation. I think we need to understand why we are continuously learning. And when we are learning something new, we need to know why we are motivated to learn, right? The story I always tell is this, right? I have a friend who wanted to learn Korean. And so I asked him, so why are you learning Korean? I love Korean drama. I just want to, understand the drama in its original language. I say, cool, but doesn't sound very much motivation. I know Korean drama. Okay, maybe I understand that. Then for some strange reason, I have another friend who also wanted to learn Korean. I was like, whoa, what's this about learning Korean? So I asked him, so why? He said, oh, I have a Korean girlfriend, so I'm going to marry her. So I need to, be able to speak Korean to my in-laws, right? So, whoa, this is high motivation, right? So months passed, right? I didn't see them. And, when I caught up with my friends, first one I caught up was the one with the Korean girlfriend. And he said, actually, no more Korean, because my girlfriend, broke up with me. So I'm not going to learn Korean anymore. Then the other friend was like, oh, I'm still learning Korean because I just love this Korean drama. So motivation is the fuel for learning. So whenever we are looking at the world and thinking about self as an architect, and we're learning about something new, we have to first ask ourselves about the motivation that drives it. If we lack motivation, then we got to first find the motivation in order to drive ourselves to learn, whatever that is subject that you pick, right? In that sense. Of course, if you look at the other M's, mind is what we always consider as learning. Muscle is your behavior. Someone will tell me, oh, I want to learn how to cycle. So I said, okay, how many hours do you spend building that muscle of cycling? Let me see your schedule, right, on your iPhone or your Samsung, whatever it is. They say, I spend 3 hours on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and I spend an hour on Monday to Friday. I say, wow, cool. But if you say you want to learn cycling and you have never done anything to build a muscle, then I think your learning is completely meaningless, right? And of course, you got material world and a membership. Membership is like, in this case, all the enterprise architect come together to learn the subject. So that's membership. And that's very important, right? The material world, of course, the matter is important as well. There are tools, right? As an artist, you want to look at your brushes, your color. As a cyclist, you want to look at your bicycle. Okay, enough, in that sense, but you understand. So what does this model mean? Well, a lot of books about learning, you'll be looking at, how about my mind mapping, or they look at kinesthetic learning or visual learning, or whatever learning it is. But to me, an adult learning starts with first understanding your own motivation, looking at the books and the mentors to help your mind development. And then you got to look at the time you put in. In other words, what is the discipline you put in to develop the muscles? And then you got to be looking at the surrounding tools, your studio, if you're an artist, your bicycle, if you're a cyclist, and whatever it is, the world needs to be organized in order that you are not facing inertia when you're learning something, right? And then finally, what is the membership you need to be part of, or either as a leader or as a member, in order for you to drive your learning in whatever the subject you're learning. If you want to be a better enterprise architecture, same thing. That's how you consider the 5 things. Enough said. There's a lot more that you can find online on my YouTube channel if you're interested. The next one I want to talk about is, what is the future? If I want to look ahead and understand the future, one of the key trends clearly is that we are moving to a time when human is added, with capacity. I mean, it can be a simple thing as AR in this case, right? Augmented reality. Or maybe we become partly cyborgs in a sense where things are, matching into our body and whatever. I hope those days don't come so early. I'm not particularly a fan of that, right? But I think what's going to happen, like Ginny Rometty says, right? Some people call this AI, but the reality is this technology will enhance us so that instead of AI, I think will augment our intelligence. She's specifically talking about AI. I'm thinking broadly about technology. I think it's about the combinatorial us plus tech coming together in order for us to actually drive our capability, especially in EA, right? You cannot do EA without tools, without the data, without the, all this coming together in order for us to do design, so to speak, right? Do we think that we'll become cyborg? I hope not. That's not the intent. I hope that's not the direction we take. I hope those technology, AI or software or whatever tools that we have is just an enhancement of who we are and not replacing, right? That would be quite scary and not something that I want to go. So it will be something like this. The tools is more like a part of us, but hopefully the tool itself is not us, right? If you know what I'm trying to say. I don't want where we are building a world where everything is robot and the robot lives in this world and humans are taking a back step and disappear, right? That's not what we are talking about. As EA, we want to build a world that is better for humanity. It is very important to be a technologist that is also a humanist. I think that's something that you all need to bear in mind and think about. So being human is absolutely key. Being human is about, taking the direction of your organization. If you are an EA practitioner, how do we create humanity or take humanity to be a better place? We don't just implement technology for technology's sake. I think that is a wrong way to go about it. The ethics is wrong. I think the idea of ethics is also fundamentally something that EA needs to grapple with, because we are thinking about where to take the organization. And it's not just about putting in network or databases. It's really about creating a better world, right? Gerd Leonhardt, who is one of my favorite futurists, anything that can be digitized, automated will be, I mean, that's not a guarantee, that's almost a guarantee. But anything that cannot be will be super valuable. And I think as an education of an EA, you want to think about this carefully. Anything that can be digitized, automated will be, but anything that cannot will be super valuable. So what would that be? A lot of calculation will be automated, but creativity, network, your relationship, empathy, those human quality cannot be automated, if you like, right? So having coffee with somebody and have a chat, those connecting is something that will be super, super valuable as per what is mentioned here, right? So I think those are the things in education of an enterprise architect, you need to think about, because those are the things that will be super valuable, super important in your own education and in your own progress as a human, as an enterprise architect. We don't design clothes, I design dreams. I think that's Ralph Lauren. And in some ways, we shouldn't just think about the items we design. I'm not, I designed this application, or I designed this system that works so perfectly. What about the actual thing we're trying to do, right? The system is just a system, but what is it trying to achieve? The human aspects, the human goals, that if you get that right, you will be able to speak the language of a CEO, you'll be able to speak the language of the masses, you'll be able to speak the language of the board, right? So I highly encourage you to think about your whole brain development, not just how good you are technically, but how good you are as a person, how good you are holistically in the whole brain perspective, right? So I want to tell this story, right? The thinking about analysis and design. Sometimes as an enterprise architect, we're actually very, very good at analysis, but we actually is very, very bad at design, right? The analyst invited his good friend this Thanksgiving, the surgeon, to his house for Thanksgiving. With expert hand, he carved the turkey into delicious looking slices. Looking at his friend, he said, I bet you couldn't do better than this, right? Because, surgeon clearly cuts people up. With a sneer, the surgeon said, I'd like to see you put it back together again, That's design. You can analyze cutting stuff up, but can you design putting it together? That is a different proposition. And I think as an enterprise architect, the education that you need to give yourself is to create this ability to design, to be creative, and not just analyze and cut stuff up. That's a very different proposition. Those, I think, is just an analysis part of it, not the design part of it. So after seek-out, before you become so entranced with gorgeous gadget, mesmerizing video display, let me remind you that information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not wisdom. Wisdom is not foresight. Each grows out of the other, right? We need them all. But don't forget, ultimately, as an enterprise architect, what are you architecting? You're architecting the future for your organization. You're not even architecting for the present. So you need to think about what information that you need to create the knowledge that you need in order for you to create the wisdom that you need so that you can think about the foresight in order for you to create a future for your organization. Any product that needs a manual to work is broken. Elon Musk, he clearly is one of the inventor of our current age. And I think this quote is very important. We are designing for the human, but we cannot design just like 20th century, where the TV comes with a big thick manual without which you cannot work, or all the VCR that we had in the past, without a manual, you really don't know how to set a time or things like that. Everything needs to be Apple-like, right? Simple. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Leonardo da Vinci, I didn't quote it here, but I think it speaks a lot about designing, right? So you need to learn the words and the language of design. One thought, media and communication. We really need to think about how we create influence today. We're communicating today through Zoom, right? I much prefer to be in a stage where I can see your eyes and I can get this eye contact and interact with you. Now I'm speaking to this camera, right? So the skills to do that is not going to come by easily. How do you transmit emotion, right? How do you transmit your thoughts and clarity and yet get emotional buy-in from your audience? That's a skill that a lot of people don't have. I think we're coming to a stage where we all need to think about our camera skills. So I gave myself this target last year in May. I said, okay, I got to get my skills in front of the camera, to the next level. So why? Because whoever controls the media controls the mind, right? Jim Morrison, famous singer, right? From The Door. And I think that is so true even today, even though this quote was in the 70s, but the quote is still so true today. In fact, even more so if you think about it. So I tried to be a YouTuber. So I'll share, and you can ask me questions, so we'll try to answer it. I have another 10 minutes, so I like to take questions, so I'm going to try to speed it through a little bit. So this is my YouTube channel that I did just to talk about my art and stuff like that. So I went from about 80 subscribers in May 2020 to currently at about 3,715 as of just now when I checked before I start. I think I've learned so much. I've learned so much about using data to drive the YouTube and all that. But actually, when I started, I had two things that I wanted to learn, and it is important for me personally as a CEO. And I thought those are the skills that I need. And I think these are the skills that you need as an enterprise architect as well. The first one was ability to tell story. Second one is the ability to speak through this confined thing called the camera, right? And to me, it is about using those skills at work and at whatever. But using my YouTube as a way of practicing, if you like, right? Because no harm, right? After all, I'm just doing fun stuff, so it's just a learning experience, right? See, learning experience. So I'm sharing this with you because I think all of us need to design our own learning experience. We are our own coach in some ways, right? You can get a coach, but in some ways you still have to push yourself and learn. And because after all, this industry is very, very young, 60 years, right? So nobody really know how to create the future next step. It's very, very ambiguous, very exciting, but very, very fresh and new, right? So in conclusion, study the world that we live in, because we are all human. So we need to know what is happening to this world, the speed of change, the kind of change that's happening, the combinatorial forces changing the world. Learn how to learn, not just learn something, not just learn Python, but learn how you're learning Python, because the next thing that comes after Python, you still need to learn, right? So the question is, how are you learning? What is your best way of learning? What forces you to go learn new stuff and so on and so forth, right? Be creative, because those are the things that are non-automatable. You cannot automate creativity. I think even AI is just simulating creativity at best. But when it comes to creativity, it really cannot, I cannot say this more importantly, you need to think about all these skills that you need in order to be more a better EA, but more than that, a better person actually. Communicate to influence. And I think the channel that we're using today clearly is a camera and so on and so forth. So I think you must learn to speak with passion, speak with clarity, but learn the tools as well in that sense. Finally, be human. We are human after all. I think we just need to think about what are the most important aspects of humanity we want to keep, because a lot of things are going to get automated, right? Clearly, there are some jobs that will go away for good, the menial labor stuff, and hopefully not other damages that comes along with it, right? And until at such point that the Star Trek economy happens, we still need to figure out how to balance all the complexity of this. But after all, we are human, and we need to think about how to be better human, right? That's it. I'm going to stop share and not take question. All right. Aaron, are you going to facilitate this discussion, or if not, I'll...
Yep. All right. Yes. Do you have any question for Vitek? You can just type in, or if I think it's better type in. Yep.
There are some questions I see here, right? How can EAs become more human? Is that something I can take, maybe?
Yes, please.
How can EAs drive human-centric values inside the organization, a business leader skill, digital automation, AI across function, and so on and so forth, right? My view is actually quite straightforward, in the sense that we must first understanding, what humanity is about. Think very carefully about the ethics. You do not want to create a world where we are anti-human, right? We don't want to create a world where we automate everything for the sake of just automation, but no other reason than automation itself. And economy drives all our decision. I'm not sure that's the way you want to go. Simply because sometimes you want to think about, okay, as an EA, right? Because you need to think about the business side of things. So you want to say, okay, maybe I shouldn't automate this. Because why? Because if I automate, all these jobs are gone away, then the place that we run is just machine. There's no one there. What's the point, right? Are we trying to reduce job for the sake of reducing job, right? If dollar and cents is driving all those decisions, I'm not sure that's the right answer. I don't have a right balance. Of course, productivity, dollar will drive all that, but humanity consideration must also come in play, I think. And it starts with the board, the CEO. To a large extent, the EA needs to provide a lot of input to the discussion as well. Yeah.
I think the next question, Vitek, someone asked, should EA officers recruit designers?
Design is actually a sub-function of EA, right? Design is a sub-function, as in like it is it is one of the things you do, just like designing a network or designing a database or designing an application. So design is a sub-function of that. You're talking about, in fact, if you ask me, design is engineering to a large extent. You're engineering the user interface, right? So to me, it depends on the maturity of your EA organization and where you sit vis-a-vis the maturity curve. If you are very, very much onto the technology realm still, and you are tasked to actually look at design, probably for you to sign off on, whatever comes through your desk, you may need design skills, whether you yourself have it or you need someone else who has the skills to be able to say, yeah, this is good design, this is not good design, right, Aaron?
Yeah, I think there's a very interesting question from I think the gentleman called Jaime. How do you think your art creation, involved in art, right, will assist you to become good architects?
Actually, it is a very, very important part of it. And I tell you my own experience. I didn't do art because I wanted to be a bit better CEO or a better EA, right? I didn't. It wasn't really, but what I discovered was that because I'm always exercising the other part of the brain, right? The part of the brain that is always thinking about creativity. I always have a sketchbook next to me, right? I'm always sketching away, looking at, either I draw whiskey or whatever. You can't see it, right?
Yeah, we can see. We can see.
Whatever I'm sketching, right, all the time, non-stop, always sketching my dog, or the thing is that when you exercise some part of your brain, your neuron is always firing, right? So when I discovered that when I'm actually in a business context, in a business meeting, and I'm thinking about business problems, the ideas are just as flow as freely as when I'm painting or I'm sketching or I'm trying to be creative. So I think it helps in many, many ways. The neurons has been established when you are exercising your creativity, and you bring that into your workspace, and it is the same neuron that's firing to some extent, and you become more creative in that sense. So I think it helps to a large extent, actually. And because scientifically, when I am doing art and I'm sitting out there drawing a tree or a house or shop house, whatever it is, right? I'm always observing. I'm always observing the little things, right? I see the rain down pipe that people don't see. I see the tree and the leaves and the color and the shades and the shadow and things like that, little things like that. So when I'm in the boardroom, I discover, I observe body language. I see the eye twitches. I see the hand placement. I see the, I see more things, I would say. And I think that helps a lot as well, even as a business leader, right, Aaron? I hope that kind of meander, but that helps, I hope.
Yes, definitely. I think what you have described is supported by the definition of architects. Actually, it's the combination of arts and science. Okay, yeah. So there's the arts and science. And in fact, the art actually is 80% than the science. So the science talking about framework, methodology is 30%. And the other one is the applicability of adapting to the environment, to the context.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because I think in the architectural world, you actually need to understand the whole so that you can design the pieces, not the other way around. We don't design the pieces so that we create the whole, right? We always understand the whole so that we can design the pieces to fit the whole, which is what enterprise architect is about, right? And you can take a lot of learnings from the building architect, because they don't start with, okay, tell me how the stairwell is going to go, right? They look at the big picture of like, okay, I'm going to create Marina Bay Sands or, something grand, and then, go figure out what are the problems that need to be solved to put it up. I think, right? Yeah.
Right. I think there are quite a number of questions, but let's be assured that we will address all these questions towards the end, because we still have about half an hour. Myself and Dave will be answering and addressing all the questions that you might have. You might continue to type in, and we will pick up accordingly, like just now to ask whoever panel or presenter. Okay, with that, I think I hand over the time to
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. On. And now we come to the second sharing session. Now we have honor Mr. Alan Chan, a solution architect from Alibaba Cloud Intelligence Hong Kong. He's a seasoned solution architect with extensive knowledge in architecting a secure cloud solution, and then help the enterprise to discover any disruptive business opportunities for a combination of new technologies. And his topic is about what is in the next norm, how enterprise architecture can be leveraged to transition enterprise moving towards digital adoption. When we talk about enterprise architecture, usually think about policy, standard, governance, and will be a broker to the digital adoptions. And let's hear sharing from Ellen. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to be here. My name is Alan. I'm an Alibaba Cloud Solution Architect. Let me give you a brief background of myself. I have a long working experience in the application development and also been doing the cloud architect for enterprise. And I used to work for a premium partner in AWS and also Hong Kong Telecom, and I have extensive experience working in the UK. I've been certified in different areas on the cloud. You see in big data, security, DevOps, solution architecting, etc. So in both Alibaba Cloud and AWS. So if you have any questions about the cloud products or the architecting on the cloud, please feel free to reach me. So this is a presentation that will share you how Alibaba Group has been transforming itself towards the digital business and fostering innovation, creating new capabilities that the past is not possible. And I'll structure my presentation in just 4 simple sections. So I'll give you a case sharing of how Alibaba Group has been transforming in the journey of the transformation. And then talk about how the infrastructure being modernized and how the business is being transformed. And at last, I give you a summary to a few points for you to take away from this presentation. Right. So this is a timeline like milestones of the Alibaba Group. Actually, it started from 18 people led by Jack Ma in 1999. Over the past 22 years, it's been doing a lot of different development and innovations, and it's formed all-round digital economy era, from business to finance, logistics, and also cloud computing. So it's been evolving, and I don't think Alibaba Group itself will stop this kind of evolution and transformation. So I give you a little bit of background that Alibaba Group, since the beginning, has been divided into many different business and different industry through both digital and offline as well. So let's take a look at how the infrastructure of the transformation begins and how it looks like. I think many of you would be interested because I don't think you heard it in English context for this journey. So I hope you like it and to learn how Alibaba Group's been doing in the past. So when we are looking into the infrastructure transformation, one of the big business that Alibaba Group has been formed and up and running since like 2003 is Taobao, the app. This is a business for a lot of different people selling their items online. So it's a little bit similar to eBay in the West, and it gets a lot of traction back to the days, and it's growing really, really rapidly. And in 2008, they decided to start a new business. It's called Tmall, which allows the brands, different brands, to join this platform, so that you can buy the business product from the brand itself. So instead of like peer-to-peer individual transactions, so you can actually buy it from a business. And when they start this, because the Taobao.com, the website, it's a very large website, and the Tmall is a new concept, so they included like this in the beginning of 2008 when they started it. So basically, Tmall is like just one of the function in Taobao. So this is what it was like. And then the Tmall, they evolve, becoming bigger and bigger, and then Taobao, it starts to put out some common services that Tmall can leverage. And basically, it's very small portion of common services that Tmall can leverage, because Taobao is actually leading and it's been there for a long time. And the management, they have a thought. I think it's a very good thought and direction that they want to do. So what they want to do is to have a separate department, a separate business called shared services, so that it pulls out these common services as a separate unit, and then Taobao and Tmall, they can access them. So this is what they want to do. However, things not really going well. The shared service unit was not, I mean, it's not a business driven. It's not a business unit. So it's more like a supporting unit. So they are not having enough power to drive these two business units, which is making money, making profit, to go in the direction they want. So it actually not really being successful. It's almost a failure. So the shared services department became really, really small, and these two business units, they are actually doing the things that they want, and still very small portion of services are being shared, and it's becoming really, really sad for the shared service department has been formed, but then it's not really doing the job well. And then something happened. So on top of this block, the block there is a group buying. So it's a little similar to like Groupon or the services that allow a group of people to purchase so that they have a higher bargaining power towards a product. It's been really, really popular about like 10 years ago. And this actually drive a lot of people going towards to Taobao and Tmall. And this business concept has been really, really successful in the West and also in the East. And this this business portal has been driving a lot of customers. So this is like a driving force, but still the share service still sit in the middle and not doing much. It's even worse. So it's not only Taobao and Tmall, and also business like 1688.com, which is the B2B portal that the original Alibaba.com has been formed, and doing the trading the Chinese products to overseas markets, and also more business to join to want to have the benefits from this group buying power, so that they can drive more customers through this portal to their business. So it's even more difficult for the share service to act as a really share service to the others. So they are actually just leveraging the group buying business instead. So they've been thinking, since everyone really liked this group buying power, can we have the share service just on the top so that they force all the business unit to use this service? So they've been planning to do this, and the share service department will actually have more power because everyone wants to do the group buying. Ultimately, it's a big change. The group buying become front end and API, different technologies portals, services being leveraged in all different units, and the shared services become a business and data mid-end. I mean, this is the term that's been finalized, formed, and then all different business units, they will make use of the business mid-end services. They can share it and they can leverage all the data and the business services being gathered in this block. So this is how Alibaba Group now the infrastructure looks like, and you might wonder what business mid-end and data mid-end looks like. What are the things that they can do? So including things like user identity, user accounts, the products, product categories, pricing, user behavior, and the reviews, transaction, etc. So that each of the business they can pull from different business, they can share one single data pool, which can help them do a lot of to enrich the user experience, including things like machine learning and things like these that can never be done before. So in the next few slides, I'm going to tell you what are the benefits that they use this enterprise architecture and achieve the impossible, in the past, things that was not impossible. So first thing, the Alibaba shopping festival. So we call it Double 11. It happens in the 11th of November. So what I'm showing you in this slide, on the top 3 bars, the blue bars, the dark blue bars, are the revenue, the GMV of the United States in the last the 5 days selling, the most popular selling dates. And altogether, it's not only Amazon, not only Best Buy, Walmart, etc. So altogether in America, the total GMV is almost 25 billion last year. And Alibaba Shopping Festival, the Double 11, we have reached almost like 3 or 4 times to this figure. And the peak order rate is 583,000. It broke the last record, and also serving a lot of customers without any downtime being recorded. So this is something that we can't do without having an infrastructure like what I've shown you before. And the other capability was not possible before is actually there are many, but I'm only showing you 2 of them. So the other one is a company called NY Bank. NY Bank is within the Alibaba Group. It does a business to do finance for SMEs, the small medium enterprise in China. So they have a framework, they call it 310, which is 3 minutes to apply the loan, and then 1 second for approval and 0 human intervention. So it was not possible in the past, and it has achieved the Bank of the Year last year for the NY Bank in China. So how possible it was it can be achieved is because it's all using the data-driven risk management. So it gathers the data from Alibaba Group, from different BU, and then to analyze them to see how trustworthy this account or this person is or this business can do through different stages from admission, pre-credit check, etc., all using our own decision engine. And it achieved 95% of automation and very minimal bad debt rate. And there was no any offline branches, all being done online. And it's something that we can't really do in the past without all the data being gathered and being shared in one group with this machine learning capability. So the next few slides I want to share with you is the business transformation of Alibaba Group. So after changing the enterprise architecture and also with the business innovation, Alibaba Group's been changed a lot. It started from trying to list out and advertise the products from China to overseas market, and then it's been changing the business really dramatically. And I want to show you a few slides to help you understand how the business has been changed and what Alibaba Group is now offering. So you can see here all the Alibaba Group business unit on the top, and it's all being supported by the very last stack, which is the Alibaba Cloud. So Alibaba Cloud is serving with the data center, network, storage, compute services, and helping the all the other services like the web service, and then the finance service, marketing services, logistic, and then the e-commerce, online, offline. All these business units are being supported by Alibaba Cloud. So the cloud unit itself is one of the the outcome of the business transformation. And because the need of the business in Alibaba Group has been not only inside China but also from overseas as well. And we have 23 different regions and 69 are really zone, which is the data center in each of the region. So these are the locations that we have. We have data center, we have machines that we can run and serving our customers. So in the cloud, you can also leverage this. One very important thing is that Alibaba Cloud offers one account, one network through one console. So you can use just one console. You can create resources inside China and also outside of China overseas regions as well. For example, you can create services in London and also having services in Beijing or in Hong Kong, and then the network can talk to each other through the Alibaba Cloud own network. So the Alibaba network is a private network that we can go through cross region, cross the China border as well. So this is one advantage and a very big differentiation compared to some of the Western cloud providers. So I want to show you the benefits. So leveraging our premium network, and you can see in this slide on the left is the services that is actually being served outside of mainland China. It's a CDN service. And when we have access from all over the place in China, it takes like 5 seconds to access this file. With our premium network, it will be less than 1 second. So this is one example that if you leverage the Alibaba Cloud Network, you can do this. Actually, this product is also derived from Alibaba itself. They require a high-speed network to serve the customer. So after Alibaba has different contracts with the telcos, with the network providers, Alibaba made a product to help our customer to achieve a similar benefits, so that our customers can make use of this. Another products I want to introduce you. This is for retail or e-commerce mostly. On the left is the image search. If you use Taobao, you might have experienced it. You can you can use your phone camera and click on the camera button, and then you can just point to any objects. So like on the left, I pointed to an office in a chair in my office, and then it will show you the similar or the exact same item that you can buy on the Taobao Taobao app, the mobile app. This service is being extracted. This app, I would say, this capability of Taobao is being extracted as an API on Alibaba Cloud that you can make use of. So you can have your own image set, and then input a sample image, and then it will return a similar or the exact product that you can get from your image set, and then you can implement this. So on the right is the AI rack. We call it it is basically the AI recommendations. So things like the homepage, what you may like, and community, the reviews, so that it will show you what your customer may like through the user profile and also the behavior of the e-commerce platform. This is also the ability that Taobao app has been offering, and then we extract it as a SaaS service on the cloud, so you can make use of. And then apart from the e-commerce, I want to introduce you for FSI. So this, what you're seeing is the eKYC product. We have called it Solos. So this is the ability to extract from Alipay, the mobile wallet. Is one of the most popular wallet in China and also in Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, we have over 2 million MAU, monthly active users been using it. So this is the capability to first to validate the ID card is valid, and then second is to take a selfie to validate the selfie image is a live person, and then it's also matching the ID card. So this is the ability we have extracted from Alipay, and then you can use it through our cloud service. We use this to help different banks, virtual banks, and different FSI to streamline their account openings. So this is also one of the business transformation I would like to share with you. We don't only provide the service or product, and then we can also extract the ability as a product itself. So you might also think of it this way to innovate your business. So lastly, this is the mobile testing for application development, and I would like to introduce it to you. And back to our data center, we have over 1,000 or more physical mobile phones. You can see like this being on the rack. And many of them are the Chinese brand or Chinese-made mobile phones. So you can virtually rent them to run or test your application. You can also write scripts and put it into different phones to run, and then it will give you a report like how it performs on different brands, different models, different versions of the OS, etc. So it supports both Android and iOS as well. This is actually a very, very convenient and very easy to use tools. One thing is that I said a script that you can write your own testing script. You can actually record it on this product, on this MQC product. So when you log into the console and you click starting a virtual phone, and then start your application, and then you can record what you have clicked, what you have done on the phone, and it will become a synonym script. And then you can save it and then apply it to different version of the OS, the machines, and then it will give you comprehensive reports. Like for example, where the application might have not working or consume a lot of memory, like memory leak or something goes wrong, it gives you a very comprehensive report for you to do testing. So this is another great product because we really, really need it for our Taobao and Tmall. Alibaba itself has a lot of different mobile apps, and exceptionally in China, we have a lot of different made of the Android phones. So this is particularly helpful before you launch your app. So this is the last product I would like to introduce to you, and it's been being used in Alibaba and then also offering as a business product that you can use. So I would like to sum it up. So first thing, you should leverage current product or service offering to accelerate your digital transformation. Products like I have mentioned, or other cloud or SaaS product that you can consider. Second is during the innovation, transform the core value into your digital business. Think of how you could make use of your core business value and then turn it into a digital business. That would be a great thing to do. And then lastly, you might turn the technology cost into a valuable asset. So what it means is, for example, you store a lot of different data for your business, but actually, if you think of it in the other way, the data you're being stored can be a very valuable asset for your machine learning. For example, in Alibaba, we store a lot of different user behavior, and then we can make use of them to become behavior prediction, so that we can make use of them to recommend products, recommend things that people might likely to like. So things like that we can do, and you can think of how your business can turn the technology cost into a valuable asset. So this is all from me, and please feel free to reach me. My email address at the bottom, and I hope you enjoy the section, and I hope you can take something away from this digital transformation journey of Alibaba Cloud. Alibaba. Okay. Thank you very much. This is all from me. Thank you.
Technology can be bought. Processes can be defined. People are the cornerstone of EA transformation. Nobody is born to be an architect. After becoming a technical architect, I actually branched out to enterprise architect, and this is where I found where my passion lies. Gartner actually predicted in the next few years we are going to have EA as an internal consultancy. I will see that in organization, a lot of the organization right now are bracing for phase 3, but they are also secretly bracing for the new norm after COVID has stabilized. And when I talk to a few businesses, they are actually planning, because some of them have not planned for COVID, and they are actually willing to take that loss right now, but they are actually planning with EA to make sure that when the new norm has come, they emerge stronger. So these are the organizations that will actually emerge stronger with the help of EA within their IT and their non-IT department. To really have be successful in EA, 3 points, PPT: people, process, technology. So let me elaborate. For technology-wise, you need to have the right tool to be able to harness all the architecture from strategy to application to technology to present it to management in a single view. In processes, you need to make sure that you have a governance process to do the check and balance. For the EA, you want to make sure that whatever initiative you have, there's a business requirement, there's a business initiative, and there's an end result tied to it. So these processes and for the governance needs to be there. Lastly is people. Technology can be bought. Processes can be defined. People are the cornerstone of EA transformation. Okay, if you're aspiring to be an EA, first it's good to check out what's the courses that SCS has provided. I'll recommend, and also attend some of the webinar that we have to understand what EA is about and what you should be preparing yourself before becoming an EA professional. So secondly, if let's say you want to be an EA, what kind of skills do you need? You do not need to be a tech person, but you also do not need to be a business person. You can be either. So don't be worried if you want to be an EA and you're not from either domain, because nobody is born to be an architect. And as an EA, you need to engage all your different stakeholders and address their concern in order to be able to meet the requirement. You need multi-dimensional skill in order to be an architect, and many of these skills actually I learned along the way. And don't be afraid, just take the course, go take the first step, get certified, and start yourself in EA. There's a whole world of learning out there for you. With this, you are able to see what is the organizational strategy towards what is the capabilities, what is their gap, what they can do better, and where is the opportunity to exploit, not just to follow the market trend, but to anticipate the market needs and also lead from it.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am Aaron, so I'm back to share my presentation topics. So I'll be sharing this afternoon about the skill future. Okay, I think just a little bit of the background for some of you who are first time hearing about skill future. Skill future actually is the guideline prepared or so-called provided by IMDA. So basically, it's about touching almost all aspects of IT professional skill set, as well as some of the sales and marketing. So basically, what are so-called the necessary skill set for the ICT to strive in terms of successful engagement and also setup. Okay, so in the past, I think the earlier version of the skill future was not that too comprehensive in terms of the covering architect role, but this time around, I think is an excellent coverage. And I think for some of us, if you want to so-called suggest the new role or the job scope, in fact, if you want to hire architects, all the definition, the skill requirement, the job scope are all well defined in this document. And of course, this document is so-called prepared or launched by IMDA. But I believe it is you can just download and you can adapt and adopt this so-called guideline. Okay, so my topic this afternoon exactly addressing all the 7 architect role and how the so-called the EA competency has been so-called documented in this skill framework. So first is about the definition. So this is the definition taken from a skill framework for ICT. So enterprise architecture actually is operationalize a business strategy. That's the first word, yeah. Operationalize a business strategy. Meanings is that as an architect, we need to be able to understand the business. We need to be able to so-called distill the strategy of the business and see how the technology can fit into it. Yeah, and of course, the objective is that because the strategy is the typically lining up about the goal, the driver, what they want to achieve. That is where the architects define the business model and the structure and how we can help the business to achieve our future state. And the second one, of course, enterprise architecture review and prioritize the market trend. So we need to know about the industry we are in. We need to know about alternative strategy. We also need to know what are the competitors are doing. If we don't have a competitor in our local country, we look at overseas, okay? And how they can so-called evolve in terms of their capability in adopting technology to support all the business needs. So there are 3 levels of the proficiency. Actually, there are 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But for enterprise architecture, is categorized under level 4, 5, and 6. So it's quite advanced. Yeah. So the first bottom part of the level 4 is that you need to understand the impact of the trend of the alternative strategy on enterprise architecture. That's very, very important because what happens is that what we do, we are helping the business to transform. And at the proficiency level 5, actually, we need to be able to design the business architecture blueprint and framework. So enterprise architecture is expected to design the business architecture. And again, of course, many of us think like, Aaron, I studied computer science for 4 years or 5 years, and I'm not sure about the business. That's why it is now is the dilemma for every IT professional. If you want to be successful in your career, we need to be able to understand the business. No other way. Because in the past, when we study computer science, we understand about science, about algorithm. But in the real world, nobody asks you about algorithm. People ask you about what are the so-called a new initiative, what are the new capability, right? So we need to be able to define the business architecture. And of course, the proficiency level 6 is that we need to sustain the evolution of the business because business keep changing. So we need to be able to sustain, right, the evolution of the business. So we need to have some sort of a way to look back and also look forward. Yeah. So not only at the present, but we know about where we are heading and how we can also refer back to the past. So this is where the enterprise architecture playing a critical role in today's transformation. So who is an architect, right? I think just now has been defined by Witek that, he has a lot of arts. And in fact, just now I mentioned that architect typically require about 70 to 80% arts and 20 to 30% science. Science means all thing about the technology, you can name it, algorithm, or all the latest, coolest gadget, or whatever emerging technology. But the art is where we can apply and bring relevancy to the business. Okay, it's the same profession with the building architects and medicine, right? Have you ever thought that why someone can become a famous doctor in Singapore or in Hong Kong? Why someone can become a famous architect in Singapore and Hong Kong? Did they so-called score straight A+ in their final year when they're studying their civil engineering or medicine? I'm not so sure, right? But one thing that a famous doctor is that he or she has the ability to diagnose and to so-called analyze the patient, right? If patient having headache, that doesn't mean you give Panadol. You need to know where the source come from and what are so-called a probing question that you need to ask. The same thing with the building architect. So now for the enterprise architects, for architects, right? It's also have a two combination, the art and science, of designing and delivering valuable technology strategy for the business. So meaning, if we do not know the business, it's very hard for us to become an architect. It's very hard for us to deliver value. That is the message loud and clear. It's the same thing like the other profession, the building architect, you need to know the building owner. As a practitioner of the medicine, you need to know the patient well. Okay, so this is where we need to emphasize a lot on the understanding the business. So how to become an architect yesterday, assuming that we don't have the IMDS skill future, we don't have the training, and how to become an architect? I would say try and error, okay, like my life. So I think I was very fortunate in the last 25 years or 30 years in my early days. My boss gave me just the title of architects. Actually, I don't know how to become an architect. And at the time, if you look at the architecture word, it's very seldom. The most you look at the vendor solution on the architecture. That's it. That's the max. So when I was in the early days and my boss gave me the title of architect, I have no choice. I have to think and act like an architect, even though I have no clue what is that, right? So I learned from the building architect on how they engage with the building owner and etc. So then I pick up so-called the experience myself. But today, of course, lucky they got the proper curriculum and mentor and etc. And of course, the second requirement is that you need to perform various business and IT roles. So if you're only performing the business, the IT role alone, not enough. You need to know how to interact with the business, and you need to also know about the so-called what are so-called the senior IT management are doing, right? How they interact, how they conduct the meeting, how they so-called execute the project. So we need to have a lot of various roles, and this is the third criteria. Is very pathetic. We need to fail in a couple of large IT projects and in project implementation and burn millions of dollars, and we never go into the prison. That is the life of architects, I guess, right? In fact, the life of IT people, when the project fail, very easy. Just blame on the business or blame on the stakeholders that they don't understand, or blame on the vendor if you pay them, right? But the fact is that there's the much more reason why the IT project failed, because so many things that we never thought of. That's why I think the architects are playing a critical role. And of course, today, with the assistance of skill framework and also the guideline, so there's a way that we can become an architect. We need to understand the value of business and technology. And also, we need to be able, just to master the skill, because everything is almost pretty much prescriptive. So there's the TOGA framework, they got Archimate notation, they got ITABOK skill set. So we just need to learn, and from there, we can groom ourselves on the fast track to become architects. Engagement, typically the architect are dealing a lot with business team. So we cannot say that we don't know anything about business. We need to be able to conduct engagement with the business. And of course, technical team, we need to mentor and coach them about our solutioning. And of course, management team, we need to be able to articulate the value, right? Just now, I think we also mentioned about we need to be able to become sitting in front of the camera, talking and articulate the value about what we intend, our intent. And of course, with the vendor suppliers, we cannot be bullied by them. I mean, sorry, I used to work in Microsoft for the last 7 years. So I know what is the relationship like, but architect need to manage or so-called maintain the integrity and is to be so-called a vendor bias. Right? And of course, with the stakeholders, we need to know how to address their concerns, and also industry body like Singapore Computer Society or Hong Kong Computer Society. So we need to get involved, right? We need to get engaged and attached to them. So there are 7 architect roles defined under the skill framework. The first one is enterprise architect. Second one is business architect. Third one is data architect, software architect, infrastructure architect, security architect, and solution architect. Okay, so let me just address all these for the rest of my sharing. So before that, I think these are so-called the job cluster, the 5 job cluster that are relevant for ICT. They got data and artificial intelligence, got infrastructure, got software and applications, strategy and governance, operation and support, cybersecurity, sales and marketing. Sales marketing is there, right? So the interesting part is that the architect's role has been assigned to these 5 job cluster. Okay, whereby the rest, sales and marketing, operation and support, well, it is indirect impact of architects, right? It's not, you don't need to put the architect full time in that 2 job cluster, but their work, it will help the operation to become smoother. Their work, it will help the sales and marketing to get the insight of the data and etc. Okay. So these are the typical example on the when you assign architect on the job, right? So the architect, the business architect may work at the finance team, and then information architect work at the sales team, how to get insight of sales, and the solutioning part with the software architect crunching the so-called the system or the solutioning part, right? And then in the IT, the security architect looking after so-called to ensure that our data are safe and network are safeguarded. Right? I think the last 2 to 3 weeks in Australia, in the US, I think you know about the ransomware. They are attacking the enterprises. So the architect need to look into this and need to be so-called safeguarding our asset, our data, and also like infrastructure architect looking all about the data center, about hosting and etc. So typically, the setup is something like this. All the architect fall under the category or the division called EAO, right? You know about PMO, it's called EAO, Enterprise Architecture Office. Okay, so there will be a data architect, enterprise architect, solution architect, business architect, software architect, infrastructure architect, and security architect. And all will be reporting to the senior management, right? So it depends on your organization. Some of you reporting to CIO, some reporting to the COO, some reporting to Chief Digital Officer. Okay, that one can be adapted to your context. And in the typical organization, you have what they call it PMO, Program Management Office, executing multiple projects, and you also have IT service management supporting so-called the service level agreement. And of course, this is where the enterprise architecture office formation is. So basically, is that to work closely with the so-called digital transformation office. And the first time to so-called understand about the requirement, understand about the strategy, and from there identify the gap so that the gap can be filled by the so-called digital EA realization through the project, multiple project. Yeah. So the bottom part is where you need to also have a very strong digital EA repository as a single source of truth, so that across the 3 teams, they can see the same source instead of you passing around Microsoft Excel or Word across the email or the shared drive, right? So you need to have some sort of a digital map to drive this. And typically, is that how it works is that they got, of course, if you put the layer on the strategy, architecture, design, and operation. Yeah. So typically, an organization is that they are defining the business architecture across from the strategy all the way to the operation. Likewise, for the data architecture, application architecture, and as well as infrastructure architecture. So the enterprise architecture actually ensuring whatever we do in the business, data, application, and technology is actually fully aligned with how we can achieve and realize the strategy. That's very, very important, because the strategy, there are 2 parts. One, they call it business strategy. The other one is IT strategy. So we need to make sure that these are well balanced. And the bottom part, the execution part, is where the PMO and ITSM are ensuring that the architecture can be realized, strategy can be realized, and as well as the support is provided in terms of the meeting service level agreement. So these are the 12 categories of the technical skill and competencies defined under the so-called skill framework. Yeah. So there are a lot of the requirement for ICT professional, especially architect, to master. Okay. So for instance, in the context of the design and architecture, there are requirement in terms of the proficiency level, yeah, in terms of the data design thinking, and etc. So I'm not going through in detail, because actually you can download this few hundred pages document for you to understand, and I can apply and adopt. And in fact, you can work with your human resource team to formalize your architecture job scope, and also the ranking, and also the proficiency level. So there are also about 18 categories about generic skill. Yeah, so this is where you need to apply a lot of arts. Just now I mentioned arts and science. This is a lot of arts here. Okay, first you need to have creative thinking, how to do a decision making, and of course the developing people, as well as how you do digital literacy and global mindset. Basically, because we are now living in the digital world. And then we also need to have interpersonal skill, leadership skill, lifelong learning, and as well as the managing diversity, problem solving, resource management, sense making, analyze the situation, the context, right? Service orientation, teamwork, transdisciplinary thinking, virtual collaboration, communication, and computational thinking. So these are so-called skills required for, in fact, not only architect, for any IT professional to be successful. So we have a long way to learn. So basically we live to learn, right? So we basically need to interact with people, and all these skills they got 3 levels of the proficiency in terms of basic, intermediate, and advanced. Yeah. So in terms of enterprise architecture role, let me just explain. So basically is that enterprise architecture role actually is the definition, like like if you are a medicine graduate, you are a doctor, you are just call it I'm a doctor, right? But you can go for specialization, right? You can go to cardiology, cardiothoracic, and you can go become orthopedic and etc. So the same thing with the architect. So every architect is called enterprise architect role. And after that, they got specialization in terms of the business, data, software, infrastructure, security, and solution. So this is the definition to get a thing clear. Then the next one, of course, we need to have a so-called balance skill, and we also need to be able to lead a technical and business discussion, right? And also aligning architecture strategy with the enterprise strategy and goals, right? We also need to so-called help in the governing principle for the decision making, right? And also how we can also oversee in terms of our quality of architecture work. And of course, synthesize diverse enterprise needs and perspective, because we are handling with the we cover a lot of division and the key stakeholders. So we need to be able to check and balance among them, right? Because we cannot be so-called sway into one political group or direction. We need to be balanced and maintain the so-called neutrality. So in terms of the enterprise architecture role, there are a lot of the business proficiency level required here. Yeah. So actually, if you get the document, you can email me. I can send you this document, or you can just Google it. You can download. So everything is clickable in the actual document. So you can see what actually business agility level 5 is. What is business environment analysis level 5 is. So basically, there are a lot of definition and requirement, but I'm just highlighting here something that you might not expect, that actually a lot of business skills are required. Yeah, as well as strategy, IT strategy, and also organization analysis and organization design. Because we know that when we transform, if we impact the people, if we impact the structure of the organization, how we maneuver that. Yeah? As well as stakeholder management, because we cannot get away from key stakeholders who sponsors or who have some interest with the transformation that we need to manage. Yeah? And of course, strategy planning about in terms of the roadmap and the realization. So in terms of the business architect, the second role, yeah. So this is actually a statement. All domain architect, if you are not a full-time business architect, you must perform a secondary role as the business architect. So if you are a data architect, software architect, security architect, your secondary role must be a business architect. Otherwise, your domain architect in terms of data, software, or infrastructure, or solutioning doesn't bring value, because you need to perform the role of business architect. So business architect actually the role for every architect. Okay, so this is the so-called definition. And of course, we need to the role business architect. We need to analyze, design, and develop business transformation roadmap, right? And then from there we see what so-called our application can support that, our infrastructure, our data, and etc. And of course, we also need to establish, understand the business priority, right? Because this all belong to the key stakeholders in our organization. And also we need to align our architecture requirement with both business and IT strategy. Yeah. And of course, we need to synthesize diverse needs of the various business units. So we are dealing a lot with the business. So if you're carrying the title of architects, you need to perform the role of business architect if you are not a full-time business architect. Yeah, because a lot of work, actually about 50 to 60% a lot of them are involving a business architecture, because like the rest application and the data or the infrastructure architect is quite straightforward. I mean, in terms of 100%, more than 50% actually doing a lot of business architecture to understand the business. Then from there, we can fit the right technology, the right so-called advancement and the right solution to address the problem. Okay, so in terms of business architecture role, I guess it's not a surprise. It is expected for us to know a lot of the business information. I mean, just a sideway to this, actually, if you notice that some of us who have managed to go into the senior management level, if you are graduated from the computer science or information technology, typically along the way, we took our MBA, right? Our Master of Business Administration. Why? Because we feel that we are lacking on the business knowledge. We are lacking of the accounting term. We don't know about the so-called business strategy and etc. That's why, like, this business architect role is required for us to understand the business a lot. Yeah, and every architect need to perform the role of business architect. Yeah, of course, we are ID strategy, organization, analytic, and the design analysis is the same like the previous requirement. Yeah, of course, stakeholder management is very, very important. We are dealing with human. We don't deal with the machine. Yeah, and of course, strategy implementation and strategy planning. So the next one is data architect. So again, we are looking at the development of the data implementation roadmap based on the current versus future state of business architecture. Again, your data architecture so-called benchmark or align or supporting the business architecture. Yeah. So basically, is that the rest I think well explained in terms of data architect role. Yeah, and of course we work with the business team. Yeah, we don't. I mean, architect of course work with the data scientists. We also work with the DBA, but we deal more a lot with the business team because we need to know actually what are the strategic or insightful information that they need, right, to support the business operation or business decision making. And of course, we also develop information management standard and practices so that can be implemented in the actual operation itself. So in terms of data architect skill, so of course they got the business need analysis is very, very important. And we also need to know about data strategy, security architecture, stakeholder management, strategy, and the strategy planning. I mean, the rest, of course, we need to perform the role of business architect, right? So they got a lot of the technical skill or business skill are required to be mastered by the data architects. Software architects, again, we are talking about the software implementation roadmap. And based on the current versus future state of business architecture, again, always benchmark with the business architecture. So if you are performing the role of business architect, this shouldn't be a problem, right? Instead of, sorry, Aaron, I'm a software architect. You don't ask me anything about business. Please ask my manager. No, you are not an architect. Maybe you can call as the senior principal software engineer. But if you call yourself as an architect, you need to master the business architecture. Okay. And of course, we understand the business priority. Right, aligning all our software integration architecture requirement with both business and IT strategy. And of course, we work closely with both business and IT team, especially with all the software engineer and system engineer and also solutioning team. Okay. And of course, we look at the statement in here is that software architect is imaginative and creative, drawing connection from diverse discipline. Yeah, because you need to connect or integrate a multiple system, etc. So you need to have a diverse discipline, especially about the enterprises or organization that you are attached to. And in terms of the skill, a lot of the business as well, business need analysis, data strategy, security architecture, stakeholder management, and of course, the role of the business architect itself is included in the software architect role. Yeah, and strategy planning as well in terms of the roadmap about your path in terms of your transition or your iteration. The next one, infrastructure. Again, the same thing. So we are looking at your entire infrastructure implementation roadmap based on the current versus future state of business architecture. Yeah, so we really need to know and align what we do towards a business architecture itself. Okay, and of course, translate the overall business strategy into an infrastructure architecture strategy. Okay, whether you want to move to the cloud or hosting and etc. This is where you need to align where the business strategy is heading. Okay, so that we can propose or so-called architects our infrastructure landscape. Okay, and of course, we also need to engage with the business leader. I mean, of course, you need to engage with the vendor like the hosting organization, etc. That one is taken, right? We need to have that, but we also need to understand from the business leader in terms of their gaps and also their challenges. Yeah. And of course, we also need to understand and align our infrastructure against the changing business and user requirement. Okay, maybe we look at the business expansion and how our infrastructure can support and evolve with the business together, instead of become a stopper or blocker to our business progression. Then the role, a lot of the business skill and competency as well. Yeah. As well as the security architect, I think they are here talking about the cyber security is very, very prominent now in the last 2-3 weeks because of the US ransomware and this week in Australia. So we really need to tighten on this, and we need to understand the impact and the risk. So if we have a proper architecture, meta model, etc., we can isolate which are the area that has been attacked, right? But if you don't have, then it may just stop or halt the business. We cannot proceed. So this is a very, very important where the architect need to have a so-called reference, and we need to be able to troubleshoot and also isolate any vulnerability. The same with the solution, working very closely with the solution and stakeholder management. And the next one is the solution architect role. Yeah. So basically, it's about this solution architect is the architect typically you assign into the project. Okay, so this is where the architect are typically start talking now about the vendor jargon. This is where you are actually working closely with the project team, with the project management team, and how you can realize the architecture in terms of the business, data, software, infrastructure, and security into a solution itself. So of course, you need to know about the business priority, right? And of course, you need to know architecture requirement that align with both business and IT strategy. Then of course, you need to apply or integrate our EA framework with the software development methodology. I think just now people talk about safe framework or safe architecture. This is where the solution architecture playing a critical role. Yeah, and of course, how we can develop so-called a new product or new solution. And of course, you need to work with the various departments, because you also need to look at how we can so-called adopt like the AI, machine learning, or virtual reality, and all the IR 4.0 components. Because this is where we really need to look whether the technology can support the business. Yeah. So we look technology fit the business, not the other way around, not the business fit to the technology. So if you have the architecture done, then the solution architect is basically looking at the alternative technology available out there. In contrast of today, if you don't have architecture, we approach the vendor first, we buy the technology, then after we try to implement. And that's not the right way. So in terms of the skill, a lot of business requirement, so-called business skills and competency are required to perform a solution architect role. Yeah, I mean, in today, if you see any business card, it coming from the vendor as a solution architect, this actually is not a real solution architect. There's just a so-called carrying the title, because they can actually talk about proposal. Yeah, this to us is more on the like business development. Yeah, technical business development. So this solution architect actually the architect that understand the business architecture. So solution architect actually got the blend understanding of the data architect, software architect, infrastructure architect, security architect, as well as the business architect. Okay, so that's why they can blend the solution to perfectly meet a business requirement. Okay. Of course, we also need to understand, the role of architects or enterprise architects, right? We need to understand the IT strategy, because typically in IT strategy, they got the implementation roadmap. This is where solution architects are realizing or fulfilling what has been defined in the IT strategy. Okay. And of course, we need to know about organization analysis, because we are going to deploy the solution together later with the so-called IT service team. So we are actually solution architect more on the architect on the ground that involved in the project delivery. Okay, as well as solution architecture skill, of course, stakeholder management, and the strategy implementation and strategy planning. Yeah, so a lot of so-called strategy and business equipment are required to perform the role of architects. Security architects basically plan, analyze, and design security principle based on the target business architecture realization. So business architecture realization means something that we are going to deliver and how we can safeguard the business itself. That's the job of security architect. Yeah, of course you need to know all type of the security protocol or methodology, etc. But the most important thing for architect is that we need to understand how the target business architecture realization, how can we safeguard them? Okay, so we engage with the business leader and we need to synthesize their critical security concern. That's very, very important, right? Security at the end of the day is what is the business appetite, right? Not, of course, we need to secure is something that we need to secure the system, that one is taken. We need to secure the data, that one is taken. We need to secure our source code is taken, right? But more importantly is that how we can engage the business leader and educate them and trying to get about what sort of security appetite they are looking for. Because when you're talking about security, it will impact many, many parameters, right? Could be performance, pricing, support, and as well as the timeline. Yeah. And of course, we need to lead our design and implementation of the system architecture security, and we need to mitigate, right? Of course, we need to also familiar with the Cybersecurity Act 2018, right? So this is something that we cannot be ignorant as a security architects. So in terms of the role, yeah, so we also need to know about the business need analysis, cyber risk management, security architecture, of course, solution architecture about the product that are being developed, yeah? And also security strategy, if anything, how we're going to adopt this, right? Stakeholder management also are very, very important. And also strategy implementation and strategy planning. Okay, all aligning about the job of the so-called the role of security to help the organization. Okay, so in terms of the enterprise architecture, I think this is what typically organization currently being set up. So they have developed digital strategy and then they go to the transformation. So if you do this, there is no different than the 20 years ago when you just get the request and then pass it to the PMO, you assign the budget and you run, right? Whereby actually what we need to do is that we need to have some sort of the digital enterprise architecture from the strategy to validate the strategy, to understand the impact, to understand so-called the risk, to understand in terms of the requirement from the multiple stakeholders. Then after that, we can go into the number 3. So number 3 is typically handled by the PMO, right? The number 2 is handled by the architecture team, our enterprise architecture office. And the strategy, actually, we can get involved. Architect need to get involved in defining a digital strategy. Yeah. So instead of 1 to 3, we go 1, 2, and 3. So typically is that when you have the strategy, they got the driver, they got the goal, they got the motivation. We need to understand how that impact the business. So there will be the business architecture and the information architecture that we need to analyze. Then after that, one is done, then we look at the application architecture and infrastructure architecture. But all these are vice versa, because any changes in any of the layers, it will impact the others, right? That's why this is where we are, of course, so-called defining a digitally connected enterprise model. That is very, very key in the today rapid change of the business and technology. And at the bottom layer is where we are doing the execution. So there will be some sort of the guideline for us to execute a project properly. Yeah. So behind the scene actually is the digital strategy, especially is the integration between business and IT. Then from there, we analyze from the strategy that we are defining, what is the impact to the business, information, application, and technology. This is where we got the gap. Okay, the gap is where we are executing it into the multiple project and we are supporting it to meet the service level agreement. Yeah, this way digital transformation and realization take place at the bottom. So architect is playing a critical role in 1 and 2, and the number 3 actually is the solution architect role, whereby we assign into the project. Okay, so with that, I think I have ended my presentation. I think about times, and you can type in any question, etc. I think after the last panel, me and Dave will be back to answer any question that you may have. Okay, with that, I think I hand over back to the for the next panel session. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Hi, sound check.
Everything okay? Okay, let's start then.
All right.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Jimmy Sen. I work for MTR. I'm the senior manager, system manager in MTR Hong Kong, and I'm also the co-member for the EA specialist groups in Hong Kong Capital Society. So I'm going to be the moderator for this panel discussion. So the topic is enable digital innovation with enterprise architecture. So we are very happy today that we have the honor to actually have a number of industry experts coming to join our discussion today. So I'm going to firstly introduce them to the audience before we start the discussion. So the first panelist I want to introduce is Mr. Goh Qian Che. He's a divisional director in Nanyang Technology University in Australia, in Singapore, and he actually had the learning technology and operation unit. His key responsibility is to design and implement a learning ecosystem that allows rapid adoption of new learning technologies to enhance the teaching and learning experience. So he has more than 15 years of experience in leading enterprise application group and supporting key business in schools and research facilities. So welcome, Mr. Goh. So the next panelist is Jerome Goddard, Dr. Jerome Goddard. He is the consulting director at Mega APAC. He's an expert in enterprise architecture, data and IT portfolio management, and risk management. He is based in Singapore. He has been leading Mega consulting team in Asia since 2016. He has over 15 years of consulting experience covering a lot of countries and different regions, helping organizations to develop their EA program. And he's also a TOGAF Live and Six Sigma Black Belt certified and holder of a PhD. So a very seasoned expert in the field. The next panelist is Dr. Gossett, John Gossett. He actually he worked for enterprise architecture since the late 1990s. So in the early 2000, he actually worked for the Danish government to help them establish their EA, the national EA program, and also create the Danish EA framework. And after that, he actually established some consulting company on EA, and he's also a member of a lot of international standardization bodies, including ISO work groups, open group, etc. He's also an author of a number of books and also a number of scientific articles. The final panelist is Li Tan, Mr. Chi Li Fan. He actually is a senior manager in the Singapore MRT. So similar to my background, the transportation industry. He lead the infrastructure team and handles more than 1,000 support the IT equipment in more than 100 locations all over in Singapore. Before that, he's actually a consultant on EA. So he has a very rich experience on enterprise architecture and helping our organization to keep the operation efficient and have a lot of governance experience. So we are very delighted that we have a lot of expert and from the industry and both from the user side, the consulting side, and also from international organizations. So it's a very balanced panel. Hopefully we can learn a lot from the panelists today. So without further ado, probably let me start with the first question. So the first question we would like to ask is, how do the panelists see the change in the role of EA in your organization or the organizations that you work with in the last few years? Is it becoming more important or less important, and why? So maybe I pass the question to Mr. Chen Che. Can you share some of the experience?
Okay, thanks, Jimmy. My department in NTU is responsible for deploying learning solutions to support the faculty and students in teaching and learning activities. And in the past few years, we have witnessed the value of EA with this very structured framework in aligning the business needs and the emerging technologies to increase the speed of digital transformation, which my university is embarking on. And with the new and stringent requirement of the data governance, cybersecurity, and cloud adoption strategies, EA plays a very important role to allow my organizations to systematically evaluate and implement new services very swiftly to the satisfaction of our stakeholders. And in the past years, our systems were loosely coupled, and it was built as and when to cater to small user groups. And it is now very more structured and coordinated to implement large-scale solutions on proven and robust cloud platforms with the EA framework. And if I can use the analogy, in the past, we are like building houses in small villages as and when the craftsman would like to. And now we are actually implementing EA like a city master plan, building skyscrapers in a city. So it is actually quite unimaginable that we are able to implement solutions without a proper planning nowadays. So therefore, EA is very well positioned in my organization now to translate the business needs to the IT solution very swiftly, meeting very stringent requirement of governance and security with very structured framework. So in the way we see the importance and value in EA very much in NTU.
Thanks, Chen-Che. It's very interesting. So it's very good to know that EA is becoming more important and just like doing city planning for the whole organization. So maybe I want to hear from the consulting side as well. So Jerome, could you share some of your insight from your customers, how EA is doing?
Sure, thanks. Quite aligned with what Chen-Che has been saying and what has been observed for NTU. Definitely, in the past 5 years, I would say I've seen a growing maturity and recognition of the EA practice within the organizations in the region, generally speaking. In some countries, I would say the main driver has been compliance to put in place this practice, as it may be required by the regulator or some policies within the companies. And in some other countries, it has been more pushed by motivations to reduce the IT redundancies, to reduce the refresh budget, for instance, so more IT concerns. In a more recent perspective, definitely the COVID has been having a strong impact on organizations, and it has been clear that organizations having an EA practice in place have proven to be reacting faster and in a safer way to those COVID effects, with a rush to provide solutions for the business to operate remotely in a safe and secured manner with very strong constraints. We have a very interesting testimony online from one of our customers, Industrial Alliance, an insurance company in North America, which highlights very clearly the benefits they got from having this practice in place with a repository where the dimensions around the IT assets, the applications, the processes, the risks are all correlated, and how it made it easier. Those are their words, not mine. It made it easy to adapt in this context of COVID and the new normal for people to work remotely. So answer is definitely yes on this importance of EA growing in the organization and moreover with the COVID situation.
Yeah, thanks, Jerome. Yeah, I like the idea you're talking about, make it easier for the organization to do their transformation. I think it's really important. So John, how about from international organization perspective or standardization perspective, how do you see the role of EA changing in the world?
Well, I think first of all, there's sort of a longer perspective, if we say 20 years or so, and then a more recent perspective. If I take the 20-year, I agree with Chen-Che that the city planning metaphor has been more and more dominant in enterprise architecture. We actually used that that metaphor of city planning when we launched the Danish EA framework for the Danish government back in the early 2000s. Now, in terms of being more or less important, it's increasingly important, I think. And one of the things is that it's becoming more and more business oriented. It's becoming more and more of a strategic discipline, and more so, in addition to what's been said here, I would add that we have more and more a focus in the last 5 years or so on the customer. So more and more turning from the classic inside-out perspective that was dominant in the classic framework thinking towards a outside-in perspective, where we have to think about how does the customer perceive our architecture and how can we, with our architecture work, help the customers.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, I think they actually align with what the previous speaker, Aaron, was talking about. I mean, you mentioned about outside in, so it's kind of more like EA. In the past, it's more like building a lot of framework, like scientists working alone, but now it's more business oriented and helping the business to transform. So, well, since you're here, so I will ask you the second question, John. So, how does EA contribute and enable digital innovation in organizations? And any success story or lesson learned you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, so basically, EA has always been a balancing act between the sort of, well, the ambidextrous perspective in organizations, you could say, between explore and exploit, as we call it in research. The exploit side is the classic utilizing better and better and so on, and we still need to do that. But the explore side is where we see innovation, and that's becoming more and more and more important. We see enterprise architects being those who facilitate experiments and sort of the new portfolio, what's coming next in the digital world, and we see the sort of the point of involving a lot of stakeholders as crucial to the digital innovation. And enterprise architects are, if they're good at it, well, they are the best facilitators for managing and facilitating the digital innovation. There's still a long way to go, though. We all talk about the digital world and so on, but research actually shows there's a heck of a long way to go. That it's I found some numbers from MIT that only 5% of organizations have actually really reached the level of value creation from their digital offering. So there's a long way to go, but still, if you turn it to the positive side, lots of work for us enterprise architects. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, John. So only 5%. So that means as EA practitioner, we have a lot of work to do, and we are sure we have a lot of employment opportunity. So maybe I want to hear from another panelist, Defan. How does EA contribute to your organization?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yep.
All right. So in my company, same as you, I work in Singapore in the MRT system. So in the MRT, of course, the business is trying to do more than just a train. So in Singapore, this company also have buses and taxis. So how to put all these things together? Before that, before EA, the company runs on its own, right? The buses or trains and run. And when come to a day where now they want to find synergy to put all these things together, they will start to ask, hey, who is the enterprise guy who put everything together? So that, let's say when I do advertisement or launch an advertisement in buses and train, they all go at the same manner. They can put it together. So as a role of EA, in this case, it's very important to put all this together for the business, so the business can see the value and make the business understand, okay, the complexity of IT in a simplistic form, so that they understand, if I want to do something, I need the EA to be coming to do the well-designed so that everything can orchestrate together. So EA need to be more adaptive to business, because business change faster than what IT can do. Business can say, tomorrow I want to launch a new website to do something so that people can enjoy certain things in taxis or in buses or in trains. And will IT say, oh, sorry, hold on, I need 3 months to plan. Oh, that's too late. So in the case of COVID, this lockdown happened in a 2-3 days time. Government announced 3 days later it lockdown. How do you do it? Luckily, fortunate for us, all the IT is in place, network is in place, our VPN is in place, everything run. So without this is quite crucial. We need to be robust, flexible, and also efficient. Yep.
Thanks. So it sounds like EA on one hand, we need to be more people-centric. On the other hand, we become even more important in all the organization to drive innovation because we actually are the city partner.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So maybe I'm move over to Jerome. So from consulting perspective, do you see how clients, the EA function within your customer help them to do the innovation? Can you share some stories with us?
Sure. So recently, EA has been taking into consideration new perspectives that were not really taken into account before about the business and operations interaction with the organization. So how the external perspective can be taken into account to make things better understood on the impact on interactions between IT and business, of course, which is the main driver for EA, but then taking into account those other perspectives. I would take a few examples. The customer journey, which is now a very specific view used within EA practice, is very valuable to bring this, at last, this customer view, but not only customer partners view, external view on what the organization delivers and what are the pain points, what are the issues seen from outside. Other perspectives are also very interesting, such as product-centric views, which is also a kind of new in many EA practices. And the risk dimension is also something very valuable to add the layer on risks that was mentioned by previous speakers today on the EA repository, on the EA assets, to be able to better see what changes, anticipate what controls may be needed to adapt faster and quicker, again in a safe manner. So these new dimensions, new perspectives involve new stakeholders around EA, which is also something kind of new. Marketing teams, procurement teams within an organization can now be interacting with the EA team, with the EA repository within the organization, and even become contributors. So those views and those perspectives I mentioned, customer journey, the product-centric perspective, etc. So these new stakeholders having some better understanding on EA can also contribute to it, and then get some also perspective for themselves to stimulate some new ideas on how they can operate or deliver better value to their customers, to their partners. So this is a trigger for stimulating new and
So Jerome is still here?
He froze?
Yeah, maybe some technical problem.
All right, maybe some network issue.
Okay, maybe while we were waiting, maybe we pass on to Qin. Can you share some of your organization, how EA help to enable digital innovation in the university?
Sure, Jimmy. In NTU, we offer the blended learning pedagogy, where students are required to prepare themselves going through the online materials in our learning management system. Then they will meet up with their professors and classmates in class for activities such as group discussion and presentation. And then when COVID-19 struck in the beginning of 2019, we were forced to implement full online courses very rapidly because the lockdown came like only 1 month notice. So that is the time that EA, with its very structured framework, help align the business needs with the available technology, catering to the data governance, the PDPA requirements, cybersecurity requirement as well. Allow us to very systematically adopt all these new learning services, such as online discussions, online assessments, very quickly, within a very, very short period of time. And during this time, we are also given this confidence that when we implement a system in such a rapid way, we are catering to all the needs required and adhering to all the necessary cybersecurity requirements. Without EA, I can't imagine that we can have that kind of confidence that you roll out a system and everything is being taken care of within such a short period of time. And so there's a reason why we thought EA during the COVID-19 period allow us to see the value of it. that without a proper framework, it's certainly quite impossible to roll out a system in such a short period of time and still having that kind of confidence. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Chinche. Yep. So EA nowadays we need to be more agile and actually help the enterprise or organization to become more agile to actually to meet the face challenge of the fast changing world. Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing.
Yeah.
Hey, we see Jerome is back. Hi, Jerome. Yeah, we miss you. So anything you want to supplement on this question?
I'm not too sure where I got frozen, so I'm sorry, very sorry about that. That's of course something that happens with this new way of doing conferences. So sorry, again, don't know where it stopped. So I was just emphasizing that involving new stakeholders around the year practice with marketing teams, procurement teams, for instance, brings new drivers to stimulate some innovation from those perspectives and improve and create new value for customers and partners.
Yeah, sounds like from what the panelists are telling us is EA have to be become more like people function instead of technological functions. So we become the gel between the different user department and also how we work with other organizations to actually help the company to do the transformation. So it's very interesting. So actually that leads to the next question. Before that, maybe I need to remind the audience, if they have any questions for the panelists, feel free to drop a note in the Q&A. So after the discussion, we'll probably have some time to look at those questions and see we can answer some of those. So let's go on to the next one. So we talk about agility. So it's an interesting topic. So it comes to the question. So if EA has to enable digital agility for the organization, but at the same time, we heard all the panelists saying the governance, the risk management, the data governance, etc. So governance is also very important for enterprise. So it's kind of like agility and governance kind of like fighting each other. So can the panelists tell us any real case in your organization or your customer, how they balance between digital agility and also governance? Maybe we start with Jerome. This is your best, so we'll let you answer this first.
Thanks, and I'll try to keep it short, not to take the risk of being disconnected again. I'll take two examples because, in fact, this balance varies a lot from one organization to another. I would say from one industry to another. So, two examples from local examples. One from Singapore, one of the largest governmental agencies in Singapore. Of course, focusing a lot naturally on governance, having very strong governance processes in place. So, trying to not make it lighter, but streamline the governance and bring agility in their processes, in how they transform, how they adapt to new needs, to improve their systems, to improve their processes. This is something they try to embed, bringing this flexibility, agility, still, of course, ensuring the strong governance, but making it more streamlined. On the other hand, I would mention one of the leading telco operator in the region, which is by nature quite agile. This is a strong characteristic of the telco business, but they realize that they need to improve the governance on the IT assets, on the obsolescence of the systems. So they're putting in place a stronger governance, trying to keep it quite agile and not bothering the way they operate, but reinforcing indeed the contribution of their IT owner, of their business owner on their IT assets, on the EA repository, to bring more security on the vision, on the status of their systems. So again, various ways to have this balance depending on the organization. What they all have in common, I would say, is adopting a principle to work in smaller releases, to move smaller step by smaller step, not to try to have big bangs to put in place to adapt for the transformation or bring governance in place, but to go by smaller steps to be able to facilitate the change management and bring those two perspectives, agility and governance, all together at the same time.
Yeah, thanks, Jerome. That makes sense. So basically, different organizations may have different need of the governance and their own right balance. So by doing EA using a piece by piece or implementation approach, probably we can better meet that requirement. So Li Fan, can you tell us more about how Singapore MRT doing that balance between agility and governance?
So as you know, SMRT transport company is rather highly regulated. Okay, the computer system and the trained operating system cannot mix together. We have to have very clear firewall in between so that they don't come. So in terms of architecture is rather difficult. There's a lot of things that we cannot bypass. So everything have to stick to those governance and regulation. So in the sense that some of our services is not so mission critical, we put it into the cloud to achieve the agility. So in that case, enterprise architect, you need to cater like, okay, first decision, do you want to go to cloud or on premise? So those things we need to be giving the project managers enough pointers so that they can choose rationally to go to the cloud or put it on premise. And while it's either side on premise or on cloud, all the cybersecurity concern we need to be able to address. So one thing, very key thing is that we are being audited like every month, different system go through the audit cycle. So we need to make sure that the system is able to withstand the audit. In fact, we say that it's expected to be audited rather than inspected. So when the auditor come to do inspection, it's already expected. So we can give, we have very short, we don't have a lot of downtime when the auditor come, we can give the answer to the auditor quickly. So this is something that EA need to think that your system is always being audited, need to be getting ready, and while maintaining the agility to move to cloud or have flexibility.
Thanks, Lee Fan. So I think EA got to do more now. So we even build up the, expanded audit capability within the organization. So Chin Che, how about university? How do they balance between agility and governance?
Oh, yes. So in my university, we actually leveraged on the governance framework to improve the agility. We used to struggle, as what Lee Teng highlighted, with different system audits and reassessment until we built the various governance into our EA framework. And as a result, that is already prepared beforehand. So when we have audit, that is actually not really an issue because all this has been prepared. So we appreciate that we have all these governance being built in, and a comprehensive EA framework that include data governance, cybersecurity requirements, actually allow us to systematically move very fast in our digital transformation, as I highlighted earlier. And this is especially true when at the moment we are implementing our cloud adoption, moving to a lot of SaaS platforms. So with that, it's actually easier for us because with all these requirements, we put forth in our procurement and we put forth to our cloud providers. And with that systematic framework, we are able to ensure that whatever platforms that we evaluate and we procure adhere to the standards that we have. So in a way, with all this governance being built into the EA framework, we see value in it. We see that with that, we actually move very fast. We do not need to, at every procurement, start to do any evaluation, start to come up with requirements. So in a way, we have already a framework to build on that. So in a way, we appreciate that as well, that governance actually help us.
Yeah, thanks, Chin Che. It's very interesting. So basically, it's kind of like by listening to what you and Team Defense said. Defense said is governance are part of the EA framework, and actually, it's not stopping us to be agile. Actually, it's helping us to be more digital agile in that sense. So it's very interesting. So it sounds like EA have a lot of things to do in the next few years, and there are lots of areas that we'll be doing, including security, risk management, city planning, etc. So it's very exciting. So it comes to our last question. So how do you foresee the change of the role of EA in the next few years? As enterprise architects or enterprise architect related practitioners, how should we prepare ourselves for the future? So maybe Defan, maybe you can share some insight from your side.
Yeah, so I will say that most of us being a title architect, usually you came from a technical background, but we all know that the world has changed. You don't need to be a very techie to be an enterprise architect. But with the technical knowledge, actually, of course, you can supplement so that your plan can be more sound and bulletproof. But more importantly is that we need to be able to connect to the business. So the business requirement need to be able to translate into a form that the technical guys can understand. And the technical guys, when they do their diagram, making sure that the business can understand so they can make the right decision. I often say that even though TOGAF is good, I'm a TOGAF practitioner, but when I draw the diagram to my business using TOGAF framework, I don't think they understand, right? So I have to transform. So the diagram eventually will transform to a house, and there are different compartment sections so that the business can understand. Here, that's where you need to put the money. Here, you need to put the resource. That's what we are going to do. So no longer a pure technical skill, but technical skill important, but it's not the only skill. So in the future, I would say that the knowledge of this EA, we need to have a business knowledge is a must. I think throughout the few sessions previously, all the speakers emphasized on this one. And cybersecurity, it is something that we cannot escape as well. And audit awareness. Okay, those are the things that I think is very important for the future EA. We wear EA head, all these things must be in place. Like what VTech was saying, you cannot be just a data architect or infra architect. When you call yourself architect, you must see the whole thing in the whole blueprint together. Okay, help the business to solve their problem. That's my thinking.
Yes, very insightful. So we, as EA practitioner, we probably need to improve our drawing skills.
Yep.
Okay, so John, from international expert perspective, any advice you give to our audience?
Well, I very much agree with what was just said here during the panel. So just to add on that, maybe to emphasize the importance of being good in communication and understanding different stakeholders and the need to communicate in different ways with the different stakeholders. Like Li Ting said, that maybe it's not all the complexities of TOGAF or whatever framework and methodology that needs to be sort of taught in the boardroom. So I think that's a major change for many practitioners, that communicate as sort of the most important part of it. And with that goes the ability to understand organizational politics and hidden agendas. Many classic orthodox enterprise architects have been really lousy at understanding hidden agendas. We need to be better at that as practitioners. We need to look at other things than the pure EA literature, the EA standards and whatnot. So that's probably the major change. But another one I would add, just to add that we get a lot on the plate even in the future, is that the enterprise, we talked about the city planning. Now I think it's going to expand even more to well, the E, as a Gartner analyst, I think said, the E is changing to be the ecosystem. So it's the ecosystem architecture where we need to understand, and our role in it, because we cannot architect the ecosystem just as sort of urban planners do not architect everything in a city. They facilitate change, they regulate change, they establish standards and zones and so on. And it's the same we have to see for the enterprise and ecosystem architecture. And with the ecosystem, of course, also comes the sustainable development goals. That are more and more important to the corporate governance and hence to the strategy in the enterprise. So we even need to understand all the dimensions of the climate change and what goes with all the sustainable development goals. So a lot on the plate for architects, for sure.
Yeah, thanks, John. It's very interesting. The ecosystem architect now will become even bigger. So in that case, I need to ask Chin Che, from the university side, do you have any class or training provided ecosystem architect now?
Yes, ecosystem indeed. In fact, I just want to share that we are playing a more pivotal role now in leading the digital transformation. And now it's digital transformation in the ecosystem, as John has said. It is very timely that during this time, in this fast-moving pace, our senior management, they require advice. Advice from the EA enterprise architects that how are they going to cater to these fast changing needs, catering to the stakeholders' needs like our faculty, our students, and also aligning to the technology available in the market. So at the moment, the one that can really play a very important role is the enterprise architect, because they have the privilege to understand the user needs as well as also getting the information on the technology and aligning that, communicating that to senior management, to our end users. So in a way, to build on this ecosystem, we feel that moving forward, enterprise architect plays a more important role now in leading the digital transformation in this sense. So beside our grounded knowledge in our EA framework, domain knowledge in the various architecture role, we need to also deepen our knowledge, especially the domain knowledge, in understanding the business needs, keeping informed of the technology trend, and also to be able to strategize. And as what John mentioned, communication is therefore important. Communications to our senior management on strategy, understanding the needs from our ground level users is certainly important. So it's someone that really plays such an important role and requires that much knowledge. It's interesting, but it's also quite daunting on what we need to excel in this particular role.
Yeah, thanks, Chinchi. So Jerome, so from consulting firms' experience, what are we expecting the EA practitioner to? I mean, what kind of skills and what do you expect them to be equipped with for the future?
As highlighted by all the panelists, the role of enterprise architects will remain a challenging one, but also a very interesting one, as it requires a broad set of skills that is evolving constantly. So it's the need to adapt and to be able to understand new perspective and new skills within the organization is key. Still, one of the key changes that we observe and that will impact enterprise architects in their role and how they interact with other stakeholders within the organization is that the ownership of enterprise architecture within the organization, which is traditionally owned by IT, is in more and more organizations being repositioned under the business with visibility from the top management, the board of organizations, as they understand that enterprise architecture has to be across all domains within the company, within the organization, sharing its perspective and bringing the visibility on an impact analysis from one side to another. So I would concur with John and Xiangxie on recommending enterprise architects to be ready to bring to get higher skills on communication and the ability to communicate with those key stakeholders for the top management and boards to showcase what enterprise architecture is bringing to the organization, and also get their buy-in, get the support for all the initiatives that EA drives and requires.
Yeah, thanks, Jerome. So listening to the panelists speaking, I feel more like EA in the past is more like the perception from people is more like drawings, architecture diagram, putting the line between this equipment, etc. But in the future, will become more like business and people oriented. We need to work with different people in the organization, even working with the ecosystem to help to enable the transformation for the company. So I see that there's no question coming in from the audience yet. But fortunately, we still have over 150, so that means they're still staying. So actually, since we still have a few minutes, I probably have a hidden questions. I didn't prepare with the panelists before. Probably I will ask them on the spot to see whether they have any insight they want to share. So we talk about EA, how it changed in the last few years, and how EA practitioners should prepare themselves for the future, right? So my question is to the panelists is, as a EA practitioners, what is the first step they can help their organization to actually embark this digital innovation journey? So what they can do to actually make it happen? So do you have any advice that you would like to share with the audience? So and anyone have any idea on what we can do to start this innovation within the organization?
Hi, this is Li Teng. So I
Hey,
think
Li Teng, thanks.
a lot of company they need EA, but they didn't know that. Okay, especially from the people at the top. So what we need to really bring the awareness to them that hey, there is this function, not always in IT, but this function in the corporate. There's this EA that can help you. So this EA in some company it may be in a chief planning officer office, it may be in a chief IT, chief technology. So it may not be in any specific function, but it need to be high enough to create the kind of influence. If it's the EA hitting in the IT department, usually it doesn't work very far because you very soon you hit into budget problem or other issues. So it got to be high enough to be the influencer, to be the trusted advisor to the C-suite level.
Thanks. Yes, absolutely. We need your influence from top. Yeah. So for other panelists, anyone want to share some of their advice to other EA practitioners? John?
I think if EA is not known and sort of regarded as something in the enterprise, you need to start showing some value as the very first thing. I agree that find some stakeholder of some level of importance and then talk to them about what are their problems and help them solve those problems. And sometimes it's not really core enterprise architecture work. It might be some CIO who asks how many applications do we actually have, because the CFO comes in and asks all the time. And then you can roll out some application portfolio management type of stuff, which is really service management, but with an architecture touch. Or it can be all the pains and gains from the value proposition design and the customer journey mapping and so on. So help solve some problems and show some value. Then they will start and think, that was smart. There's some smart guys over there in the architecture. Maybe we can go and get them involved with the next problem we have.
Yeah, that's very useful, John. It's great. So we, as EA, we don't sit there in the room, do all the architecture diagram. We actually go to the users and help them solve their problem. In that case, they probably will appreciate our effort and give us more budget or more work to do. So how about Jerome or Chin-Che, anything you want to add? Chin-Che?
Yeah. Yep. In fact, I agree with Li Teng that in some of the companies, they may not have the luxury of having an EA office. So in my organizations, the EA function is actually with the CIO office, and also coordinating with different groups. And we do not actually have direct access to our university senior management. It's always gone through the CIO. So what we can do at this moment is really to show, at first, meaning the CIO, that the value of EA. So what we have done in having a framework that have expedite all the digital transformation. And for CIO, for our case, to bring forth that value to his senior management. So in a way, it is really to show value in it, and thereafter to allow to have more resources in this planning. The challenges faced with companies or perhaps bosses that do not see value in EA, because sometimes all these governance planning framework take a lot of time and don't show immediate results. So if I want to have a system implemented very fast, I may not have time to say, I need to sit down and start to draw diagrams. So that is something that we need to convince our stakeholders that this is indeed important.
Thanks, Chin-Che. Very useful. In fact, we have a question from the audience. From Krista Chan, not all the EA can be in the corporate department. How can the EA at the IT, within the IT organization, show its value from its place? I think probably some of the panelists already answered part of it, but anyone want to add on top of it? How EA sitting under IT can actually generate more values and demonstrate the values? Any suggestion to the audience?
If I may, and to follow up on what was said before, it's important to target very specific pain points and to deliver some value on those pain points. So it can be very specific to some IT concerns on the refresh budget, on the obsolescence of technologies, on bringing visibility and ability for the IT management to make better decisions on those issues, on those use cases. So picking up specific use cases where there are some identified pain points and where also the ES stakeholders have skills, have some comfort and some knowledge to work on those use cases. Too often, some enterprise architect will try to bring some help or to get involved on processes or on products they're not too familiar with. So they lose credibility by doing this. So smaller steps with specific use cases, and then being opportunistic to adapt to those pain points. The concerns of the CIO from one day to another can switch very fast. So you have to be able to adapt to that. Hence, smaller steps is more realistic to be able to deliver fast and move to another topic.
Yeah, thanks, Jerome. Yeah, it's very insightful discussions. We heard a lot from the experts from the industry, some from the end user side, and some from the consulting or even standardization organization side of it. So it's very useful. And I think that's for the discussion today. I would like to say thank you again to all the panelists. Thanks a lot for their sharing and their advice to the audience. But before we left, actually, there's one more question just come up. So. Is it easier to introduce EA at the time of radical change of the organizations? So anyone want to answer that one?
Hi, this is Li Ting. So maybe I try to say something on this one. As you know, this is an extraordinary time, right? COVID is hitting all of us. So a lot of companies really put on their thinking hat. Why we have not seen this coming, right? So so the story that I have is that at one point of the time when COVID just started but not getting serious yet, we say that, hey, whole company, let's try do a video conferencing. Because you know the company is a transport company, video conferencing is never on top of the agenda. You don't need video conferencing. I want to see you. We are fixing the train. The train is maintenance issue. You have to come. You don't. You don't do it virtually. Everything had to be physical. But when COVID come, everything go virtually. So at the time when we call for a meeting to say, hey, everyone come and join, a lot of people say, no, we don't need. This is waste of time. It will not happen. But true enough, it happened. So at the end of this cycle, or in the middle of it, a lot of senior management start to thinking, okay, what have I missed? What have we missed? So what have we missed? The answer is like, okay, do we need an enterprise-wide looking at the whole architecture? How do we prepare for the future, for the post-COVID? So actually, a lot of people are saying that COVID is the best architect, right? You heard it many times. How difficult am I to get my people down the line to use Zoom or Teams to do conferencing? At one point, when I asked people to use at that time it was Skype, okay, the first question the audience asked me, very good. How do I turn it off so that people cannot see me? This is the first question. So, but now it's changed. People always want to be seen, want to see the presence. So it's a good time for us to start some EA work. Okay. That's my thinking.
Yeah, that definitely. Actually, I concur with you on some of the experience in the past. In the past, people in some industry, the people may not get used to having EA or using a lot of digital innovation. But now, because of COVID-19, everyone realized that actually digital innovation and also EA is very important for the company. As you mentioned, that EA should have the planning and foresee the future and actually help the company to get prepared before things happen. So it's very important role for the organization. Okay, cool. I think probably we are running out of time, so I probably will stop here. And thanks again for all the audience and all the panelists joining this discussion. I'm sure that every one of us learned a lot from the panelists. Thanks again for sharing. Okay, I'll pass it back to the Hong Kong CS.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think we come to the final session. So there will be the Q&A, and me and Dave will so-called facilitate the last session. Dave, are you back? Because there are still quite a number of the outstanding questions that need to be addressed. So the rest, I think you may fill in the so-called any question that you may have. You can just type in, and then we will now is the open so-called open topics. Of course, in regards to the enterprise architecture. Yeah. So let me just read the first question. Thanks for a great session. I'm curious to hear from you if you have been using mapping tools like business capability mapping, value stream mapping, customer journey mapping to align business strategy, IT strategy as part of your EA practice. The answer is yes. That is the so-called the tools or the modeling that is done during the business architecture development. And as I mentioned just now earlier, right? So every architect, you need to be able to use this the technique, the method, like business capability mapping, value stream mapping, and how the actually all these are very interconnected, because when you define the value stream, you need to be supported by the capability. Yeah. Then after that, of course, the capability itself, it will enhance the customer journey mapping. So customer journey mapping basically is we are providing the end-to-end closed loop experience from so-called the customer interaction or touch point with us. And this is where the business architect are playing a critical role. Yeah? So if you have a chance to look into like the TOGAF BA or the business technology strategy of from the ITA box or business architecture specialization, is exactly addressing this so-called the term that you are talking about. And of course, behind the scene, all of that need to be connected, need to be integrated using a meta model. Yeah, so I hope that answer the question. The next one is, are you working with the ops team to drive the usage of policy engine governance as code in their DevSecOps pipelines? The answer is yes, right? Because this one, again, it depends. If you are the so-called security architect or solution architect, you need to get involved very, very closely with this DevOps team, yeah, DevSecOps team, because you need to ensure that the solution that you are so-called governing in the implementation fulfill all the security criteria. And of course, you also need to meet and fulfill what are the business driver, business goal, business strategy. Yeah, in addition of fulfilling all the security requirement. Okay. The next one is, recently I saw the leading SAFE framework, and how does this go with our EA role? Oh, okay. Basically, the SAFE, if you go into the website on the SAFE framework itself, actually they are so-called addressing multiple layers. Maybe I would just, actually I have the slide ready. Let me share with you. Actually, where is the slide? Microsoft. Yep. And then for those of you who are actually asking just now about where do I get or we get on the so-called skill framework, this is actually the website, right? You can see here. Okay. So in regards to the SAFE so-called framework or architecture, actually there is a mapping here that actually is a SAFE roles itself actually pertaining a lot into the enterprise. So enterprise means, when you talk about enterprise architect, right, that I have explained, actually covering everybody, right? Every architecture domain like business, information, application, technology, and of course other architecture roles. And after that, of course, there will be a solution architect and the system architect. So system architect here talking about if you are system architect in here actually addressing both the infrastructure
as well as all the so-called like radar, sensor, all type of because like IoT, Internet of Things. So the architect itself need to have so-called playing a governance role in here. So defining all the architecture model, the blueprint, the framework, right? Then after that, the implementation is still go back into the safe, so-called following a safe framework. Yeah, it's the same like the agile method. The architecture is basically just a guideline and how you adopt the so-called the solutioning part. This way you can apply the safe or agile way. Okay. I hope that answer your question. I think the next one is about, as a veteran IT practitioners, it seems a lot of EA concepts are things we have already been doing for some times. Is it advisable to get certified in EA, and how do we go about it? Okay, I think what I would say is that I have experience so-called teaching a few quite number of EA courses. Actually, enterprise architecture is not something new. If you have already applied correctly in your so-called IT professional career, pretty much if you do it right for the first time, you already done EA. Okay, I repeat again, if you do it right for the first time, you have done it EA. But the fact is that the reality of life is that we need to do multiple times, many times before we get it right. So basically, in the Lamentum, they said there will be a school fee, right? So we must fail, and then after that, fail fast, and then after that, we come back and we do it again until finally we found it that, hey, this is the best way to do things. Okay, so enterprise architecture actually is about exactly about that, right? Either you do it try and error yourself if you can afford, if your company or organization, your client allow you to do mistake and they don't penalize you, be it, you just learn it by yourself. But if you think you can't, you need to do it right for the first time. That is where I think the path of architect about, how can we get improve our competency. So IMDA providing us a skill framework, the guideline, the job scope, the roles, and also the proficiency level. And there will be, of course, certification out there, right? Like the from the open group. Open group would have quite a number of the certification and also from the ISA, right? I think Dave is back here. Dave, you want to add a few things from your end?
Thanks, Aaron, for the answers. Sorry for my late. So yeah, I agree with that. Maybe we need to look into different kinds of framework nowadays, because especially not only the TOGAF, or also the SAFE and other frameworks, so that we can work together. Not only one, because there's no one size fits all solution, especially when we are touching some digital projects that is adopting some agile approach. We may need to fine tune or sort of combine different frameworks into the one that your organization fits into. Yeah. So that's all for the questions so far you have. Is it? Any more questions to me or to Aaron? Okay, maybe if there's no more questions, maybe Aaron, you want to make a closing remark on that? And then I will follow.
Okay, I think first of all, thank you so much for everyone. Thank you for the panelists, speakers, participants. I think both Hong Kong Computer Society, Singapore Computer Society crew as well are helping to make this happen. And I know it's not an easy task because it has been planned for a few months, right? And then we do a rehearsal and etc. And I think it is such a accomplishment to have a joint event like this. Yeah, as I mentioned in my opening, that if without the COVID, either I'm traveling to Hong Kong or they've come to Singapore. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
We can just run like, we can sit at our office or home and we can run like this and we can get a wider audience. And you can see that I think enterprise architecture is gaining momentum, right? I think many countries now setting up their national EA, in this region. So this is something very, very encouraging, because I think they already hit the limit that, how can we connect everything that we have so-called put into the strategy, into the execution, like just now, inside out, outside in, outside out. How can we see all the map nicely? Okay, imagine that 15 years ago, if you don't have the GPS, If I go to Hong Kong, I really need to be able to ask someone, and I need to have to survive with the minimum Cantonese. Otherwise, people don't understand my English, right? Now, I just keep quiet. I just need the data roaming. I turn on, and I can navigate to find where my hotel is, or where to eat, and etc. Okay, I can survive without speaking the local language. The same thing now, the enterprise architecture evolved into that manner. How we can so-called navigate the entire enterprise. Yeah, which is what we call it a digital map that we can use today to do transformation. Okay, with that, Dev, I offer to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would like to say thank you again to all the parties involved into this seminar, especially Hong Kong Computer Society Secretary Office, and also Singapore Computer Society EAs and the Secretary Office. And they work together for a few months, as Aaron mentioned, and also all the committee of the Exco and all the speakers and panelists, and of course our sponsor Alibaba Cloud and Mega International. And this seminar would not have been possible without their support. So I think a lot of challenges have been pointed out and addressed in the panel discussion too. So I hope to see you all again physically, no matter is anywhere in Singapore or Hong Kong. Actually, I miss Sentosa very much. Yeah, and also the Hai Nam Gai Fan. Yeah. And so I miss you, and I think we will see meet again very soon. I still see you guys are still online. That means you are finding the seminar very useful and enjoy it. So thank you very much. Thanks again. Hope to see you very soon, and stay healthy.
Yeah, if I can do a last message, please participate if you have an office in Hong Kong, but if you have a present office in Singapore, your branches or your subsidiary, please submit and participate the EA awards under Singapore Computer Society. Okay, so this is something that you can refer back to my original.
So Hong Kong company also can apply, right?
As long as they have the physical office in Singapore.
Okay.
The implementation can be in Hong Kong or anywhere in the world, but they must have an entity in Singapore, because the award can only be given to the Singapore registered company.
I see. Okay.
All right. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Goodbye.